You ready?
It is 6 o'clock. Is everybody ready?
Yep.
And we'll bring this work session to order. Chief Royce.
Fire.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to present the 2015 Ambulance and Fire Department budget for the Junction City Fire Department. As this was my first time going through the budget process from start to finish, I found it enlightening as well as challenging. First and foremost, I believe the primary responsibility of a public sector department head is to be a responsible steward of public funds. I'm a firm believer that transparency develops trust and credibility, and I can assure you that any decision my command staff or I ultimately make, financial impact and considerations are a high priority. Citizens in this community are the highest priority in any of my decision-making processes. Such current and future Junction City Fire Department programs as arranging for our firefighters to stay in firehouses, of hosting departments when traveling out of town for classes and training, thus saving the department and the city on lodging costs.
Great.
The recent pilot cooperative joint training with the Fort Riley Fire Department, allowing our personnel to utilize a professional training facility as well as receive fire instruction from qualified fire instructors. Whereas in the past this would have required paying overtime for callback personnel to staff our stations while our personnel were at training. Now we can get all of our on-duty personnel to live fire training while Fort Riley Fire Department backfills our station. This saves tremendously on the time and travel costs while ensuring all personnel get the desired training as well as strengthening our relationship with the post. The upcoming relicensing of our ambulance service this fall for 3 months in order to allow our 3 paramedic students to perform the required field internships here in Junction City and Gary County while on duty in order to complete their program. This saves them from having to travel to another agency or department, and it helps the department from having to hire overtime personnel to fill their spots while they're gone, while they're completing their internship. We apply for federal assistance to firefighter grants each and every time the application process is opened. We currently have a grant pending for EMS costs that would replace all of our existing 12-year-old cots, thus saving the department approximately $25,000 in replacement costs. The Junction City Fire Department currently consists of a total of 12 vehicles, of which 3 are pumper engines, 1 ladder truck, 1 squad, 1 staff vehicle, and 2 pickup vehicles, along with 4 ambulance units. Staffing consists of 50 firefighters, 1 administrative assistant, and 1 fire chief. I would like to briefly discuss some of what I consider the 2015 budget highlights. As historical evidence has shown, you will notice that personnel costs do in fact make up 93.3% of our fire budget. This falls well within the national average of 93 to 96% of all career municipal fire departments. Some of the other highlights I would like to mention are the fact that there is a substantial decrease in line item 651, parts vehicle equipment. This is due to the addition of a new engine 1 and a new ladder 2, both 2014 Rosenbauer apparatus, which will be under manufacturer warranties for several years, thus decreasing our repair bills. These apparatus will be delivered and placed in service this July and August, respectively. We will then follow these deliveries up with 1 more new engine, hopefully by the late summer or early 2015, thus replacing all of our fire apparatus. We will increase the number of our paramedics by 40%, with the addition of 3 new paramedics within our organization by the first of the year, bringing our number up to 10. I've asked for a slight increase in our training budget for 2015. Our program of financially assisting our own personnel with becoming paramedics has been a tremendous success, and the first 3 members who've taken advantage of this program will graduate later this year after 4 semesters of hard work. This has caused other members within our department to become interested in wishing to participate in this program as well, growing our ranks of paramedics. This is a direct reflection upon the dedication and sense of community service that exists within our department. In 2015, we are scheduled to purchase a new ambulance, which will give our department a total of 5. Past practice has been to sell off the oldest unit. However, staff and I have made the decision to keep the oldest unit next year, repurpose it to be used as needed, and maintain its ambulance license. It will continue to be licensed, allowing us the capability to perform additional EMS transfers during periods of high demand or to be utilized in any type of mass casualty incident. Another capital project we wish to move forward on is a storage facility for our reserve fire apparatus and ambulances, as well as laundering machines for our personal protective equipment. We are currently in a 5-year replacement program for our personal protective equipment. Maintaining proper cleaning of this equipment is essential for its care and extending its life. With the addition of new, larger fire apparatus, as well as keeping the 5th ambulance, we are simply running out of room at existing facilities. The storage facility would be in the form of an approximately an 80 by 45 Butler-type building just south of Station 2. State statutes require ambulances to be stored in enclosed structures with concrete pads and heat. We have also acquired new and additional ice and surface rescue equipment, as well as a light tower from Homeland Security from a regional grant that can be deployed regionally for incidents. And these pieces of equipment would also be located at this facility for multiple use from Gary County or other city departments. In reviewing our proposed budget, you may also notice we are requesting that the the Fire Equipment Reserve Fund be continued to be funded at 2 mills. While this fund may look like it is large and attractive to cut, be aware, by not properly funding this line item is exactly the actions that got us into the dire straits regarding our apparatus, as well as other essential fire equipment. I would strongly encourage maintaining this 2 mil level for the next few budget cycles, as we will also be soon looking at major expenditures regarding self-contained breathing apparatus, as well as smaller, newer support vehicles for the command staff. I can assure you the Junction City Fire Department is an exceptional steward of the city's funds. As you can see, I'm not alone here this evening. I'd also like to recognize my administrative assistant, Kelly Heindel, and Battalion Chief Rick Rook. I'm extremely fortunate to have such dedicated employees with whose efforts and assistance I would not have been able to put this budget together. Which brings us to our firefighters. I'm extremely proud and astonished of the work our people do each and every day. We currently have 36 of our members certified as advanced emergency medical technicians. And with our soon-to-be 10 paramedics, this will give our department a remarkable 92% of all field personnel certified in an advanced level care for our citizens. I cannot find any other fire-based EMS department or any fire department for that regards in the state of Kansas that can claim those kind of numbers. This allows for our department to, the advanced care also allows for our department to bill at different rates for advanced care, but more importantly, it proves that the level of emergency care in Junction City and Gary County is exceptional. Our members have embraced and accepted my values and beliefs about where we can take the Junction City Fire Department in the future, and it's an honor to be their fire chief. I will do my best to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
You will also note that the fire department budget appears as if there's a decrease in salaries. That's not. It's simply the reallocation of the benefits to the ambulance.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. I didn't catch it.
Remember, we had
The county's paying on
informed,
that now,
we had
right?
informed the county that that's what we were doing this year.
Yep.
That this was the phase 3 of our steps to try to get the cost reallocated properly, because phase 1 was the initial starting to charge benefits for what was never charged benefits on when I first got here. Second was the goal was to get the salaries increased and reallocated so that the salaries would be properly allocated to ambulance. And the third goal was then to get all of the benefits by the totality of the salaries into that ambulance budget. So it decreases the fire budget, increases the ambulance. And if you recall, we discussed this at the last inter-city meeting, city-county meeting with the county commission, and reminded them that that's what was being done.
I have 2 questions. For the Butler building, do we have any proposed utilities costs?
Utilities costs? No, we do not. This is very, very preliminary stages.
Okay. The other thing is, how many paramedics do we need? I mean, I'm just saying, what if everybody wants to be a paramedic or have that training also? Is there a ceiling that we really only need to pay for this many to be paramedics? That's my question.
There's really no national standard out there about paramedics per capita, so to speak, for a community. I think it shows an initiative of our people that want to provide an advanced level of care in our community. Really, that would be a nice problem to have, is to have too many.
Well, my concern is salary, because once they have that training, they get paid more. And
Yes, they
we've
do.
got to have some type of a ceiling for how many we really need.
Understood.
So
Right now, there's currently none.
I'm grateful that they really want to get trained. I think that's awesome, but, we have so many dollars to use, so keep that in mind.
Either by contract or by city policy, there's currently no limit on the number of paramedics.
Thank you.
On 517, there seems to be a substantial increase in fire cycle pay overtime. What is behind that?
Fire cycle pay overtime is basically a line item that covers any time the firefighters do not have any time off within a 27-day pay cycle through FSLA. They are paid that. As for the increase in that particular line item, it could be for a various number of reasons. Particularly, again, overtime, it is budgeted every year. I can't give you an exact reason why it was substantial, but as you can see from actuals in 2013, it was $45,000.
It just appears to be $30,000 over.
Right.
Are there more guys hurt, so there are fewer people to cover the shifts?
There have been. We have had some significant injuries, but that... Is that what?
I'm asking Kelly, wasn't that partially to do with the contract negotiations when they did in 2014, the new contract?
The wages, yeah.
But-
If the wages go up, then we need to budget higher up too.
The cycle pay would be budgeted as if everybody drew it, wouldn't it? And then the actual payment being so much less was probably due to the fact that not everybody drew their cycle pay because they took vacation and then weren't eligible for it.
That is correct. They're eligible for 13 cycles.
And how many hours in the cycle? It'd be 12 hours every time, wouldn't it?
12 hours
Yeah.
every cycle.
What do you think?
And a whole year they'd be eligible for 13. We budget that they
Yeah.
cycles out of the 13.
And I don't remember when I last told you guys this, but basically, I don't let the department heads transfer money down from personnel, ever. They can transfer money up to personnel for a reason, but we don't take personnel money and transfer it down. If they don't spend it, they don't get to use it.
It's very rarely that someone does not have a day off in that 27-day cycle, either by injury, sick leave. It does happen sometimes that no one takes time off during, but not very often.
I mean, I can think of, since I've been here, one time that we allowed money to transfer it down from up above in personnel downward, and they had to be really legitimized. Because that's the kind of, you budget for X number of hours and X number of people, and that's the way it comes out in the budget. We don't let them. We allow them to move money up and down in commodities and contract services, but rarely will we move money from capital up or down, or same with personnel. We think those are more fixed by you.
I just don't understand a 35%
Well,
increase.
Part of it would be the hourly increase of the personnel, because that's what Kelly bases the cycle pay off of.
Sure, part of the issue would be that we budget that they could potentially, based on 13 cycles available on the leave time that they accrue, they could earn 8 of those. And if they they take more leave time and not banked, or they're injured or sick, they may only get 4 of those cycles. Budgeted for them to get 8, but if they don't use that many, then you have a savings there. But we at least budgeted what they have the potential
And so you've maxed it out at a possible 8
8 out of 30.
throughout the entire department, all employees.
Yes.
Okay. Confusing.
You have to,
It might be helpful to know how much was budgeted in 2013. Did you also budget,
I can tell you that.
approximately 75,000 in 2013, and then... at
Probably
the end
not
of
because of
actually-
the pay raises that went
Pay
into
raise.
effect
See something?
into, right.
I'll tell you that, just a second. $18, isn't it, your fund? Okay, and that's line item
517.
70,000 was budgeted,
And 45,
and they-
236,
yeah, and they spent 58.
or 58, right.
So they spent all but about 10,000?
No, I spent 45.
Oh,
Spent
45.
45. Uh,
2013. Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
I was looking at the different line item.
So what happens to that if it's not used?
It just goes back to the general fund, and it becomes cash carry.
Okay.
I mean...
It's not
you-
used somewhere else in here.
Right.
No.
No, that's what I just was reporting. I don't allow the department heads in capital and personnel to move money up and down arbitrarily. They can, the first rule of thumb is they charge everything where it goes properly. If they don't, that's their mistake. And then they have to justify to me if they're overspending a line item, or if they need to spend more money in a line item and don't want to have a negative number. They have to justify to me why within commodities and contractual, or up and down between commodities and contractual, why they're moving the money. And then we make the adjustment. I'll sign off, make the adjustment, and that corrects it. What I don't allow them to do, on a very rare occasion will I allow them to take a chunk of money from personnel or capital and move it somewhere else, particularly since capital was pre-approved by you for specific purpose, and the same with wages. You approve for so many people to have so many hours of work, and we just don't let them move money from those two areas. Like I said, I can only think of one occasion that we did that. I just don't let them do it very often, because that's not the purpose of that money. The rest is you can understand why they would move money up and down for capital, commodities and contractual, because it's volatile on what supplies to which line item. But we don't let them move money around. First of all, they have to have it approved through me, and then secondly, we don't let them rarely touch personnel and capital. It's just a standing. And it doesn't say they can't do it in the personnel policy, but there's a procedure they have to follow to do it.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't overinflated to be able to use somewhere else.
No, I remind them
Understood.
on a regular basis
Yes, you
that you
do.
can't touch personnel.
Understood.
When you do budgeting, you want to plus or minus your budget, and hopefully never minus, plus or minus within 10%. Never, and you don't want it to be negative, so you have to be careful. But we would not let them transfer that if there was a large amount of money just to arbitrarily spend.
The other thing that concerns me a little bit is building another building. I'm a little concerned with keeping equipment and then building buildings and then doing maintenance on buildings and not having enough people to do the maintenance, and I think other than if you have a piece of equipment, it should be protected and housed. We either have too much of equipment, or we need to we need to think about how we're housing that equipment. I'm a little concerned with the proposal to put up a Butler building to put equipment in. And then in addition to that, line item 682, I think you look pretty well dressed
Thank you.
professionally. The increase for command and staff, explain that a little bit.
We've recently, we've done it before, but we did change our promotional process recently, where we do exchanges with other departments, where we'll send our battalion chiefs to another department to assist in their promotional processes. Currently, none of our battalion chiefs have what I would call a Class B, which is what I'm wearing tonight. Not a badge, a white shirt, any collar insignia or anything. They have basically the BDU type uniforms. No name tag or anything. We have seen an increase where other departments are asking our personnel to assist them with that. Not only that, but the professional attire when they give presentations and do public speaking and get out into the public. I think it's important that they be recognized as chief officers, especially anyone that's ever obviously had military service understands the importance of looking professional and presenting themselves in a professional manner.
How many staff does that include?
At this time, it's only going to be 3 battalion chiefs.
Battalion chiefs?
Yes.
Besides the ambulance, what else is going to go in this Butler building?
The Homeland Security Regional Light Tower that we are currently storing at Station 1. And part of the issue with the Butler building, too, is obviously it's going to be sized, and the specs would be available for the newer type apparatus that we have. As an example, the new ladder that we have here, we cannot station it here. The building is just literally too small, too short. So it's going to have to go to Station 2. Some of the other newer apparatus. Keep in mind, the intent, and I have actual signed contracts, are to sell the existing older apparatus. So it's not like we're going to maintain and keep any of the other 2 pumpers. Our 3rd pumper will become a reserve. So when all the replacement is done, we'll still have 3 pumpers and 1 ladder. They'll just be newer. Keeping the 5th ambulance would be actually stored there. The proposal is a 4-bay Butler building. It would not be finished. It would not be used for offices. It would strictly be used for storage only, and available not only to us but to the county fire if needed, if they needed to come by and pick up any piece of equipment. It would give us a one-stop place for all of our reserve apparatus, all of our extra protective clothing and everything. People would only go there. Right now, sometimes we have to come to Station 1 or Station 2. We do have new surface water rescue equipment that needs to be stored, too. That would be stored there.
The hazmat trailers, where would they be?
The hazmat trailers would be stored there, and the possibility of our kids' fire trailer also there. So we've already basically have filled it up already. Pretty much.
And that would give you more parking back here
Absolutely.
in the rear.
Yes.
Which we're struggling with the parking issues. And I don't know if any of you have been in their facility over here recently on this side. They're just equipment stacked on the floor and on the side and everywhere, every little inch they can find. And it's sometimes a trip hazard over there.
It can be.
Can be.
Another capital improvement program is lighting in that apparatus bay. Again, when we have 2 vehicles stacked double deep, there could be issues there. It's awful tight if you haven't been down there for the 3 bays we have here, and even the ones that are on the west side.
It is tight. I've been in there, but it's been tight for 25 years.
But the equipment's getting bigger.
The newer
The
equipment
ladder's-
is larger.
Ladder's a lot
The
bigger,
pump
right?
trucks
Even
are
the
bigger,
engine.
they're hauling more water for the emergencies that they carry.
And we have trailers sitting outside already, don't we?
We sure do.
Yes, we do.
And have had for several years.
That building, again, would not be finished off or used for offices or anything else other than vehicle storage and equipment storage only. And it would be in a secure area with Station 2 being literally 50 yards away. We do already own the land.
Yeah, it's our land.
There'd be no issues with that. It would need to be, have utilities, water and heat only for,
Is that included in the price?
no, utilities are not included in that.
With 75,000, would that include the heating system in there?
It should, yes, yes.
That was-
I seriously believe we could do this easily for that amount. And keep in mind, we will have revenue coming in from the sale of the other apparatus.
How much do you expect to?
The contracts I have now are $25,000 each for the two engines. And the ladder's negotiable. It's being advertised, so.
So you could be pretty close to paying for the whole project with selling the
Very
current stuff.
easily.
Can we earmark that?
Well, it'd go to
Can
the
we-
general fund.
General fund anyway, does, so it doesn't
Oh,
matter, right? So-
it goes back to general fund?
I thought it was going to fire
If-
Or is it
reserve.
with the,
It goes to fire reserve if the trucks were purchased originally with fire reserve money. And I think they weren't they?
Nah, I
Kelly
believe-
and Brooke? The original trucks were probably purchased out of fire reserve, right? I'll double check it. But it would go back to fire reserve, where we've got the budget for this building at.
It's
It's
where it
it's not
costs-
in the general fund, it's in the fire reserve fund.
Bruce the bottom, and Bruce was the one that set up the fire reserve program.
Yeah, so if the money came from fire reserve, it goes back to fire reserve.
Can the building be purchased with fire reserve funds, or
Yes.
no?
Yes,
Yes,
So-
it can
can
be.
be utilized.
Yes, as long as the building's used for fire
Yes.
apparatus.
Equipment and buildings are acceptable to be used by statute.
So, that's where, when he keeps talking about it, it's not in this fire budget, it's in the fire reserve budget on the next page, 75,000 for the purchase of the building. Even though
Anticipated revenue for the
See where
ladder.
see where I put it, he had it requested under capital in the general fund, I zeroed it out, and I said, no, that's, you can purchase that through fire reserve. And it's over in fire reserve,
835.
okay? So that it doesn't impact the general fund.
You're going to move that to fire reserve.
It's already
Reserve.
moved there.
Mm-hmm.
I already have it in.
35 on the
835
next page.
I already have it moved there. It qualified for fire reserve, so that's where I put it.
Ms. Beatty, I have a question for you. On, just under line 985, capital equipment, those numbers and the 2015, adjust and department, are those numbers correct for that final total of 8,500?
Yes,
Okay.
because all they're purchasing is furniture out of this capital, out of the fire, general fund fire, because I zeroed out the rest and put it over in fire reserve.
Okay, because I saw the 10, then the 73.5, then adjusted to 83.5, and it comes out 8,500.
Yes.
Okay.
You can't buy the furniture out of fire reserve, but you can buy the building out of fire reserve.
Okay.
What's the total increase from 2014 budget to 2015 proposed?
On just fire or what? All three funds?
Well, I was hoping you had it for all three funds, but
No. I didn't add it up that way, but I can real quick. 2014, though, has the $1.2 million in it, so I need to take that out. $3093.
It actually comes out to the final numbers you have, 356, 226.
For all of them?
For the reserve.
Right. I see that one.
Is high. That's why. It's 2, 3. Okay. 2, 6, 8, 4, 5, 1.2. It's the transfer, that's why.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It transfers the money and the salaries. It's a difference of $753,893. Okay, there's two things happening here. The budget's transfer over to ambulance, and the most significant part of the wage increases was all on the ambulance fund, because that's where most of the wages were increased. Okay? And the benefits went over to ambulance. The second thing that's happening, in order to keep the 2 mills, the fire reserve at 2 mills, as he explained, to try to build and bank money for large pieces of equipment, there's an additional $100,000 in there. Now, do you have to have that? No.
That's an additional, right? That's beyond that's beyond the 2 mil. That was a reserve,
No, that's part of the
fund.
2 mil. It's part of the 2 mills.
that 100,000 is?
Yeah,
After the lease purchase payment.
after the lease purchase payment. Which is a smart thing to do. Because you're dealing with pieces of equipment that are, well, an ambulance alone is $170,000,
Be more.
or more. But it can't come out of fire reserve.
No, that'll be on the...
But if you can, the more equipment you put over into fire reserve, that leaves money more available for ambulances and such. But anyway, you're dealing with $300,000 and $400,000 pieces of equipment. It's not chump change. And they haven't reserved all of your pickup trucks are.
You know, battalion vehicles are probably going to have to be replaced in the next, very soon. They're,
You haven't had a new pickup truck since I've been here.
no, no.
The newest one's a 95, or 2005.
I was going to say, they're
95 and
Haven't been.
2005.
95 and 96, I believe.
Squad's in 89.
Squad is in 89.
I must have ran that department sometime.
You want to
They're-
change?
They haven't, I mean, they haven't bought new trucks in a long time.
Yeah, and they're getting high mileage. Keep in mind, the battalion chiefs run the entire county. Thought I had the age of all our vehicles here. Maybe I didn't.
And what you don't see, also in that 753 that I told you, that's the full price of the ambulance. And then you have to take, because this is budgeted as a full purchase and then a lease off as a lease purchase. You have to minus then the revenue. The same 254 that's the full purchase price of the ambulance. It's not that high. What do you have in there besides the ambulance?
It'd be spec with proper equipment.
Oh, okay. So the new ambulance, then would take that off of there because it's going to become a lease purchase. So then we're down to 9, 4, 8, 508. Then you minus off the 100,000, you're down to 400,000. In wages and other increases.
We have a squad that's from 1989, a pickup
Vintage.
of 1995, and another pickup of 2005. My intent is to probably at least get rid of one of those pickups if we do pick up an additional or a newer battalion vehicle, such as a suburban type vehicle versus a pickup. And then the squad would eventually be replaced in the next year to two with a kind of a hybrid type vehicle that can be utilized in the county and as well as the city.
So if you'll notice on the wages under ambulance, it's 400,000 increase in wages. The remaining 400,000 I just talked about, it's all in wages. And that was agreed to under the union negotiations, and the county was also aware of that. Of any of the employees that were salary deficient, it was the firefighters.
Why we were losing them to other cities.
Yeah. And that was a correction that was agreed upon, and the county knew that we were putting it mostly into the ambulance portion of the budget. It was explained to them in advance.
All the questions I have.
I think it's important to determine what's truly needed regarding the number of paramedics to provide service. 'Cause, I mean, I think it's really important to keep a handle on these salaries.
We can do a little more research on that.
Okay.
We ought to have one for every ambulance that we have. You know,
I agree. I just don't know what that, if we have 5 ambulances, so we have, we have how many right now? We have 8?
7 right now.
7 right now.
And 3 hopefully by the end of the year. They pass.
And then people are sick or hurt. and
Exactly,
people on
which we put about 3 on each
vacation,
shift.
Different shifts.
So
Yeah, 3 shifts.
8, 9,
To
to allow some flexibility.
Yeah, 3 would be, if you ask any of the battalion chiefs, they'd love to have
we
3
have
on their
3
shifts.
shifts.
Right.
So we're talking,
3 times 3, 9, so,
Probably a max of 10.
yeah,
Okay.
okay.
but if you want to send them on transfers, hospital to hospital, then you're going to need 2 more per shift.
They have to be certified just to do transfer.
Depends
Only
on
if
the
it's
type of
an ALS
transfer.
care.
Something to discuss.
Yeah, it's just, yeah,
I think we need
something
to,
for,
Details.
yeah, I
You
think
guys can work that out.
we can,
Right, we will.
we know we'll
That's
have
not
the
for us.
10 for this budget, but
Which is 1 out of every 5 members, out of a 50, I mean.
we'll
which-
research it.
Sounds good.
And so that we have we know we'll have the 110 budgeted for this one.
Kind of difficult sometimes to prevent people from trying to, that want the training and to better themselves, obviously. The people we've identified are obviously going to remain here within the community and serve the community versus getting the training and leaving.
And if you have the training, you have to put it into practice. I mean,
Absolutely.
you can't just get the certification and then sit on your laurels, correct?
Correct. Correct. In fact, part of the agreement we have with the current 3 that are within the program that we're assisting with their tuition is a commitment, a signed contract commitment, a minimum of 2 years from the time they're certified.
It's fairly standard, and we hold them to it.
Yeah, if they leave within, then they would have to reimburse
Right.
the department.
Mhm.
Fire reserve.
Are we kind of doing them all 3 together, or? what are we
Yeah.
doing?
The fire reserve,
I thought we were.
we pretty well,
Yeah, did you have any other questions on fire reserve for either of us? Fire reserve is
Question of the 100,000 fire reserve.
is basically the income is from the
Ambulance equipment.
setting the 2 mills.
Can we take NRP monies and put towards that as well?
Pardon?
We take NRP monies and put that
You
towards it
have
as
to.
well?
It's a tax levied fund. Any
That's where it's
tax
done.
levied fund, it comes out of it.
Hmm.
so the NRP comes out of the fire reserve fund.
Yeah, if you levy a tax on any taxable fund, if we levied a tax on capital improvements, it'd be the same. It has to come out of it. We don't do that split, by the way. That just is, we're told what comes out of it, where.
And the budget reserve comes out of this and goes into that $100,000 budget reserve. Where does that go?
It's, if we continue to try to build that, next year you'll see that line say 200,000. And if they don't spend it, then the next year it'll say 300,000. You know, if you're just trying to build it and build it and build it,
Okay. So it just stays in the fund.
stays in the fund.
Now I understand that.
It's my understanding that was not funded at a 2 mil rate until this past year.
During the crisis, we took it down to 0.7. It was-
0.672, I think.
Yeah, it was pretty low. And we only gave them monies for protective equipment and minimal capital.
Is this 100,000 inside that 2 mil?
Yes. Right now, I have to get, it's 2.03 or 2, something, 2.8. I'll have to get it under the 2 mils by code, by the statute. And we will eventually, but that's all to be done when we do the final numbers after I get audit numbers, after I get cash, and after I get the mill value. And I'll make all those adjustments and finalize these numbers, and I'll point out to you guys where the adjustments were made.
Just,
Go ahead.
I just wanted to make sure that I understood you right, that the $100,000 in the EMS equipment fund falls under the 2 mil reserve fund that we agreed to.
Now, are you on the ambulance?
An ambulance or,
Yes.
The ambulance, the
That,
1103.
yeah, I thought,
1103.
oh, that, you're out of fire reserve. Okay, so I answered that wrong then. You're in the ambulance fund, and you're asking for about what?
I didn't know.
1103. What we've done is, we're asking to set up basically a EMS reserve fund, much like fire reserve fund.
Which line are, which one are we?
1103 on page 35.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
He's asking for a transfer to capital improvement fund, and I denied that because we just don't have the money to do that. in the general fund. That would be a half a mil. So that would mean a half a mil levy increase if you were to authorize that to go back. Almost, well, a little over half a mil.
Part of the reasoning is, right now we're operating with some pretty old, by industry and technology standards, EMS equipment. Heart monitors that are more than 7 years old, which are on the market right now for anywhere between $35,000 and $38,000 a piece. A vital piece of equipment. We've been getting by for several years with refurbs, I believe. Some of the monitors have been refurbished.
Industry is not required to maintain them, or run into that in the past, and we're trying to hedge it and avoid that.
But with an entire 2 mil levy, doesn't that cover the ambulance?
No.
No, you
Fire
cannot.
only.
It is, by state statute, it has to be used for fire equipment.
Only.
Facilities or equipment only. There's no, you cannot cross, kind of like Chief Brown's issue with his drug money. You cannot cross over and use it for anything other than fire-related. And it was usually, it was, historical background is it's usually used for volunteer departments and throughout the state for them to accrue enough money to buy equipment.
Okay.
So-
Well, what I was looking at is, if we do to the fire and ambulance, we may have to redistribute. If we only had 0.7% last time, or...
0.7 mils in
0.7 mils,
2010. 2011, excuse me, budget,
Okay, and then we went to a complete 2 mil,
last year.
which is 1.3 more than we had. Maybe we don't make it overnight, but maybe we have to redistribute some of that 2 mil.
It's up to you.
That's my suggestion.
Regarding ambulance revenue on page 36, I think we're really overestimating what revenue you're going to take in. You've never cleared more than $2 million ever, and now you projected 2.35.
Line 759 offsets that with bad debt. That's an accounting issue, and this is the way the accountants are making us do it, the auditors. You have to put it what your billed revenue is, and then you have to write it off. Because then, that way, you know how much we're supposed to have gotten taken in as commissioners. It's a transparency issue. Otherwise, if we just put in the difference, then you'd never know what we really are billing versus what we write off.
Gotcha.
So,
The medical
for
shell game.
transparency reasons, we're required now by GAAP to put in the full amount billed and then actually have a line item that says, what are we writing off? And that's why we now have to bring before you, for your approval, the
Contractual
write-offs on a
each
monthly
month.
basis.
Yep.
Every month, we have to get your blessing or permission for those write-offs.
These are estimates based on call volume and obviously throughout the industry right now, the Affordable Health Act, or Affordable Care Act, is going to have a tremendous impact across the board, and nobody knows how that's going to play out because there hasn't been enough people that are using the system yet. So it's kind of even trying to find information on it, nobody knows until we get some historical.
It's a moving target right now, in other words. So we do our best estimate based on historic data that we can find.
Yeah, we lose over $50,000 a month on between contractual write-offs and bad debt.
Yeah, our
So-
projected write-off next year is $435,000.
Yeah, that's probably closer to 6, but
Our write-off in 2013 was $385,680. And when we bill the county, they can't go by this revenue projection and these expenditures. We have to bill, according to our contract, actual revenue and actual expenditure. So we don't use budgeted numbers to bill them. We have to, And when we were doing this, because of all of the Obamacare issues and all of the thing that we were doing a careful analysis of this, and Kelly and I and Jolene did an examination of how we were billing versus the way the contract reads, and we actually underbilled the county for $10,000 last year. It wasn't a lot of money, but we did underbill them based on that. So now I've directed staff to make sure that you follow the contract, exactly what it says. And it says actual revenue minus actual expenses, and they pay the 67% of the difference. So we're being very careful now about how we're doing that, and they've set up the new method to bill it out so that, as I've tried to do with all the agreements, and we're getting caught up now on all of the ambulance stuff, that's exactly what we're doing. So we're getting caught up and making sure that we're following the contracts.
In regards to bad debt collections, we show a decrease in bad debt collections by using Kansas Set-Off and Collection Bureau of Kansas. Does that mean we're getting more bad debt back?
They've helped some. They've even taken they're taking a couple cases to court for us. They have an attorney on staff, which is one of the reasons we selected them. They have an attorney on staff that they utilize to take cases to court. And so we are taking cases to court now, which we had not done before. Our biggest collection, though, is with the state program for set-off, and that's how we get most of our money. And we don't pay a percentage to Kansas collection agency on that. They in the contract it says if we collect it from them, you get nothing, and they honor that through the contract anyway. It's only for the money they collect, and so it has helped some. They're a little more aggressive.
What's in line 797, the contract operations?
Ambulance.
Strictly a contract for that?
Right here.
797,
Yeah.
that is our billing, on the ambulance side, sir.
Okay.
Okay, that's the 7.5% paid to Omni Billing, who's the current contractor that we're utilizing. And it's fees for any external Medicare compliance audits.
The main increase from 2012, 2013, and 2015 was a recognition by our auditors as well as internal staff that we had an issue with Omni, and I think I reported that to you. And we didn't believe they were compliant with the Medicare Medicaid rules, and we addressed that through the contract. And they did get them compliant within 6 months. We gave them 6 months to get everything in compliance. Well, what we realized was no one was really watching the ship as far as making them in compliance. And they're supposed to be the Medicare Medicaid experts. So it was suggested by our auditing firm that we should audit them because it's a significant amount of money and they're a major biller for us. So we should audit them. And so in a $3,000 to $5,000 range, we're not going to audit them every year, but every second or third year, since they're a major contractor for us, we would audit them to make sure they're in compliance. Because guess who gets in trouble if we're in non-compliant? Not them. We do. We're the ones that are going to get hit with the fine and get slapped if it's wrong. They won't. We will. And so we're going to audit their records on a regular, every 2 to 3 year basis. Make sure they're in compliance.
We still have some counts with the prior service, too. They're trickling out slowly but surely. The ARSI, is that?
Collection agency.
The collection agency.
Yeah. So we are going to audit Omni. And we put that in the new contract with them, that to make sure they understood that we're going to be watching them and we're going to be auditing their work to make sure that they are staying in compliance. It's complicated. You know that. The Medicare Medicaid billing is complicated. And we don't have an expert on staff to tell us whether or not we're doing it right. The only reason we figured out that they were doing it wrong is Kelly had watched a webinar, and she goes, I don't think that's the way they're doing it. And they weren't. So we caught several things. And
There's some key people at the hospital that could probably help with some training. regarding coding and that type of thing, so
Good.
just let me know and I can direct you to the right people.
That'd be good, okay. But that's, one of the things they suggested is that we weren't doing any internal audit on such a large contract.
Coding is key.
Yes.
I know, so most of these, Cheryl, that, your recommendation usually is downward, but on line 840, you're recommending more on the furniture. Why is that?
There's an increase.
840?
On ambulance?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I took it out away from him and added from a fire, I took it, lessened it in fire and then put more over into ambulance. He had asked for 10,000, 10,000 originally, and it was 8,500, and then we moved it over to ambulance, on more of an equal split.
What is furniture for the vehicle, or what is
No,
it?
it's for the station.
This is the station. This is their mattresses and chairs and stuff. They had really old stuff.
It's pretty worn.
Yeah,
It's
we,
very worn.
are obviously
Ugly, ugly? Well, that's not a reason to get rid of it.
different from any other department. We live here
Yeah.
24/7. So things get used on a daily basis and break down and wear out, and
We certainly don't
replaced.
have a plush department.
no.
No. It's not a plush department like you see in some
Basically,
cities.
just kind of divided that more even between, okay.
I think we just replaced mattresses this year that were going on 8 to 9 years old.
Maybe they would like to pretend they're camping out and just get sleep. Just kidding.
Yeah, you might have some of them mad at you for that comment. No, again, very old equipment. I hope you've noticed a trend in the last couple of years. We're not allowing them to go in and replace everything all at once. It's in stages. In stages, we're looking at used equipment, we're looking at all the options.
Same thing with the firefighters' gear, that's getting replaced.
In stages,
Signing
we're not,
gear.
We've recently started a 5-year rotation on that. And again, the gear is probably anywhere from $2,100 to $2,200 per set. So we're doing 10 people per year.
And I think it just helps to just keep more things consistent by doing it that way.
yeah. I want,
Opposed to these spikes.
yeah, my goal is to not spike the mill levies, and that's how some cities do it, but it should be steady as you go and replace equipment, and that's the eventuality with the replacement of, instead of buying all 9 Tahoes at once, we want to get that, start a rotation on that. So we replace maybe 3 a year for several years, rather than just constantly coming in, and then all of a sudden 1 year they're asking for $250,000. Like, wow, that's tough in a budget. So we're trying to get it cyclical, and that's what he's working towards too.
Chief, I just have one last question
Yes, sir.
for you. On the fire department, and we'll go down near the bottom, 802, where it says fire department, where it's removed, is that included in, on the second page, fire equipment 802 there? Just about down towards the end under expenditures?
Line number 8, or line item 802?
Correct. Says fire equipment.
Yeah. I think that was an older line
Yeah.
item that's just left in, for some reason has not been removed.
You can see that as it phases out, that line item will get dropped.
Okay. But this will get us towards 10 sets?
Yeah, the 10 sets usually come out of line item 683, protective gear,
Okay.
a year,
In fire reserve.
and fire reserve.
Okay. They don't give any with the new fire trucks?
No, they don't give that away with the new fire trucks.
Get a Dalmatian.
Yeah, how about the Dalmatian?
And we won't
Get it
accept
from the
it.
animal shelter.
That costs money to feed.
A
stopped?
I don't have anything else on the fire department.
I'm done.
I'm good, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Didn't bite too hard.
Mr. Corman.
Fine.
Next batter. Next batter. Batter up. Oh.
Yeah,
Yeah,
They get questioned at a lengthy time.
it's kind of warm right now.
that's what we're doing, Mark. Well, see,
I don't have quite
Mark's first try.
quite the opening statement that the fire chief did. Up until recently, in the past few weeks, my department and budget, I've contributed, but I have not done the budget. So I've been questioned on about things that I need by my direct supervisor, which is Greg McCaffrey. And when I found out that we were moving things around and shuffling the way you answered to who, my department was pulled out from underneath the utility services of Greg, and now I'm responsible for the budget. So I've had to sit down and ask lots of questions to Ms. Beatty and other staff to make sure I understand what I'm reading and asking for. I know what I want, but I don't always understand what I'm reading in the budget, so I had to ask plenty of questions. And first off, I'd like to start off by saying that the staffing summary in your guide for our department does not include what we've recently taken over from the police department, which was the blight program. And I also assumed the sign department all at the same time at the 1st of January of this year. So that's not included in here, our staff responsibilities and duties. Things that haven't been addressed for several years, 4 or 5 years with blights, were the trees and city sidewalks here in town, and that is one of my biggest issues. We have to make sure that we don't have trees hanging over streets or in front of signs or traffic lights. We have to make sure that we have good public passage on all of our pedestrian passageways, sidewalks, streets. You have to make sure that the public is not put into the street right away. And those are things that we're going to need to start addressing now. But as we're getting a handle on the blights, I don't know if the commission's aware, but to date, we've written 1,680 notices. And it's not that we're going out there trying to find them. They come to you rather quickly when you're doing that position. We assumed 2 new employees, a full-time and a part-time blight officer, which when I found out about this in November, that it was coming back to our department, I stressed to the former city manager, Ms. Beatty, and my direct supervisor that I didn't think that 1.5 staff doing that would be adequate, because I've had this in my department before, but it's been 10 years, and we actually had 3 personnel writing blights, handling everything I just explained to you. And with a 1.5 staff, which I don't know if you're aware that we just lost the part-time gentleman that we had on for 5 months. Yeah, his wife had a baby, and they decided to just up and move and sold his house in 1 day. So I've had applications out. We've actually did interviews and made an offer. So we should have the part-time gentleman starting in, I think, June 30th is what I was told today from HR. I'd like to keep addressing the things that we are. My time is very, very limited with all the responsibility now. The phone calls have increased 50% or more because of the blight coming back to our department. And my time has really been eaten up with the sign portion of this, handling signs. For whatever reason, I don't know if we weren't hitting it as hard as we needed to be on the signs.
Probably not.
I'm not making many friends doing the sign control. There's a lot of people that are putting signs that are illegal signs in the right-of-way. I've picked up marker signs, which are the kind they stick in the ground. I picked up over 400 in the last 4 weeks myself. And I do most of that on the weekends and evenings because that's when they stick them out. They wait till you go home at 5 o'clock on Friday and put them out. And I see them when I come
back from whatever I'm doing, lake or whatever, and go get my truck and drive around and pick them all up. And it takes a considerable amount of time to do that. And I'm leading up to why I'm explaining all of this, because I don't think that we have adequate staff. And I'm not asking for 5 people, but I really would stress to you, the commission, that the blight officer that's part-time, I would really like you to consider making that a full-time position, so I can start training these guys also to help me with sidewalks, signs. I mean, the administration part of it is still my responsibility, but I'd like to train them, and I'd also like to cross-train the inspector, the blight gentleman, to be construction inspectors also. It can be done. You train them in-house, you send them to classes, and that will get to the budget on training and expenses. But that's where I'm going with this, is I don't feel that I have adequate staff on the blight portion of this to keep good control over what's going on right now. I told these gentlemen that I hired to do the blights that when grass season got here, you think you got a hold on it now? You don't. Wait till it gets here. And they were pretty overwhelmed. And now we got a handle on it, and my part-time guy resigns and leaves, and now I'm behind the 8 ball again. So we're actually cutting probably 35 to 40 blights, high vegetation, every Friday. As soon as the rain quits, this will slow down, and they can concentrate on the things I've mentioned, the sidewalks, the trees, things that create a hazard for the public. So, and I'm not asking for more staff in the office. Sarah is very, very busy, but I think she can handle it. I told her, if you can't handle it, defer the calls to me. I can handle the angry customers and explain to them this is what has to be done. We have slowed down in the past years. If you'll look at the budget on what we paid out for the actual contract services, that's the blight mowings. In 12, the commissioners directed us to cut back on the blights because they cost so much to have done, and you don't always recoup that money. Matter of fact, you probably don't even recoup 50%. Excuse me, I need to get a drink.
Right here. Oops. I'll go get some water. Be right back.
And the reason for that was, as you all know, we don't have the money. We haven't had the money for several years now, and by cutting back on the blights, cutting them less, it saves the city money because, like I said, you don't recoup about 50% of that money or more. It goes to the taxes. It's assessed to the taxes. If it's sold to somebody at tax sale, if they don't make enough money to cover what was owed on the property, we don't get any of that back. So that's why they've cut back. But with all the empty lots and things still out west of town, we don't do them. Those are handled through engineering, but we handle all the infill lots, excuse me. We handle all the infill lots, which an infill lot is in a development where you have houses that are already built. It's not built out, but you may have, a perfect example is Mann's Ranch, where there's 20 or 30 houses in there, but there's 6 here, there's 4 or 5 over here, an empty lot, and then another lot. That's an infill lot, and that's my responsibility. Everything else that is undeveloped, as in the developments that don't have any housing in them, are handled through engineering. So I don't have any control or have anything to do with that. That is handled by them with a letter, and that's the part of street maintenance. But the blights, I mean, it's like I said, we've written 1,680 notices. We had really, really good compliance until we started grass season. We had about a 90% compliance rate from owners with public nuisances.
Garbage, yeah.
Whatever, constitutes a
Trees.
Public nuisance, vehicles.
Vehicle.
As soon as grass season got here, I told those guys, I said, you're not ready for this. It's gonna start going the other way. And it has a little bit. We dropped back. Our compliance rate is still about 80%, but I can see it getting worse because people are, for whatever reason, we had 2 days of rain this week. The grass, I told these guys, my blight officers, it's going to get ridiculous, and it did. The grass grew almost a foot in a week, and now there's quite a few issues out there with high vegetation. We are addressing it. I'm actually assuming that role amongst other duties until the new gentleman comes on, June 30th. And it's my intention to keep the same pace we are, but I could do more if I had that person full-time to concentrate, to just let those two people concentrate on the blights, public nuisances, and have them handle things that I don't have time for, because I'm answering so many more phone calls, questions, about everything you can think of. And unfortunately, when you do these type of things, the blight program itself, you get lots of complaints because people don't like you telling them how to operate or run their property, which unfortunately you don't like living next to that when it's next to you. So we are trying to stay on top of this. It is tough right now. Yeah, in the wintertime it does slow down, but if I had that guy as a full-time blight officer, I could do my training and get them acclimated to do construction inspections and housing inspections. Things that aren't necessary for me to be out there. I can do more administrative stuff that I need to be in the office and answering phone calls. And my phone rings all day long.
If you'll recall, in the police department, the police officer was getting called away from doing blight work because he was filling in all the time for police when they got shorthanded. So he really only worked the blights half-time.
Unfortunately,
It was too much.
sworn officer, you still have to be an officer
Yeah,
too.
he was an
so
officer first. And so
subpoenas, court.
that's when we had talked to you last year about moving it over into a non-sworn officer to take up the duties of blight. And we went from having basically a person doing it about half-time to one full-time and one 19-hour week, because that's what we could afford out of last year's budget. The question is, and I couldn't answer this, so I took it back out of the budget, is how committed are we to doing blights and blight management and sidewalk management and sign management and all these things for our community. I know I hear the community saying they want these things, but how much of a priority is it in the budget? And I didn't have good feedback from you guys to say how much of a higher priority is it, whether you want more money back into the budget for it or not. So I said no on it initially.
Okay, so my question is, on, I assume we're talking line 520 or the personnel budget, where the department is 270, 193, and you 245, 661, that would be that difference?
The
Like-
30,000. It'd be another $30,000
Okay.
to $35,000 more.
Okay, so
30,000 with benefits.
but basically yours takes out the...
Yeah, I take it out.
Okay, so
Remember, there was a
so if you were
change.
going to add that, if you were going
Yeah.
to do that, then it
This
needs to be the other
budget
number.
looks a little odd, too, because remember, I took Sarah's full-time salary from all the way from engineering, and it's 100% now in building and codes, because it was split. From that action I did a month ago, I took it, her salary, put it all in engineering, and all in codes, and then Tanika's all in engineering, so that Sarah answers only to Mark, so that...
So if we were going to want to include that position as full-time,
need to add
then
it
the 270 would be more reflective
We'd
of
have
what
to
we
add
would-
back in
Okay.
the salary, another
30.
about 16 to 18,000 in salary, and then benefits. Is what would end up happening. I'd have to spread the benefits. So it ends up being approximately, I did it about $30,000. If you wanted to add the additional 19 to 40 hours a week.
I might also mention that our staff is myself, Sarah Brown, Darren Case is a construction inspector, and then I have the two blight gentlemen, 1.5 people. We assumed quite a bit more responsibility, and we were given close to adequate staff, but I mentioned this from the beginning when I found out we were getting it back, that it's a tough task to handle with, if you really want to enforce it, we can't. Either way, we're going to do our job, but you can't get it all done.
Are the sign people under you or just taking care of signs?
I am the sign person.
Okay.
I assumed that
Part
responsibility.
of code enforcement.
Clarence May, who recently retired, and I knew that I was getting tasked with that, and then I found out that the blights were coming back in November. So I started asking questions like this right now. What about staff? Who's going to help me do this? Are we going to hire a sign person?
You don't go out and put signs up, is that still
No.
John?
Yeah, John Tenario works for Public Works. He handles all the regulatory signs for the city in the right-of-way. The enforcement of the signs on, now, I tell you what I haven't really gone after, but I'd like to dedicate more time to that on the signs, is obsolete signs. When a business leaves and is no longer there, you're supposed to take the faces out, or if they're a white interface, you can turn them around so we can't see it, but you can't leave that face. I'd like to address those and pole signs where the business is no longer in business and the pole is still there. I mean, they need to take it down if they're not going to advertise, or get rid of the sign itself. But the marker signs are a safety issue. Anything that takes your attention away from the roadway and is in the right-of-way, the easements, is a sign that's probably an illegal sign. The only signs that are allowed in the right-of-way are regulatory, and then there's an exception in the ordinances, if you read it, about civic organizations, churches and Kiwanis, things like that. They are allowed to, with our permission and a drawing, place those signs in the right-of-way. No other signs can be in the standard traffic manual that we adopt every year, or the police department has adopted, does not allow any signs in that easement, anything that would distract your attention that's close to the road. And most of these signs, the marker signs I'm talking about, they're actually an illegal sign just because you're not advertising the goods you sell on that property. You're advertising, it's an off-premise sign. You're advertising your goods on somebody else's property. I've had a couple of people come running out to my truck after I've already picked the signs up and said, "Those are my signs." And I said, "Well, do you sell furniture?" "Well, no." They paid me to put it in my yard, and I said, "Well, it's an illegal sign. They should have asked first. They didn't."
Well, they need to pay it, put it in their yard, not the easement.
Right, but they're not. They're putting them all out in front of the sidewalk. That is the easement. That is not, you're not allowed to do that. And I've had to concentrate a lot of time on the sign, a lot more than I thought I'd have to. No.
Probably during elections, too.
What's that?
During elections, that happens.
Oh, elections, it's worse.
Yeah, it's
See your face.
something else.
Elections
And
is
there's a
worse.
time frame that they can only do that, and I think it gets longer and longer every year that they put them out ahead of time, so.
That's interesting.
30
I think
days.
it's like 5 days after the election they have to.
They
update.
still can't put them in the easements or on city property.
Right. Right.
They try it all the time. They try to do it all the time, but guess what? We'll be picking them up.
I actually spend 20 or 30% of my time, all the time, dealing with signs. Yard sale signs, garage sale signs. We really, I mean, in the future, we'll look at possibly doing something with that and enforcing that if you don't pick your signs up, there should be some penalty.
It's tough to
We
do.
shouldn't have to police those up all the time.
Tough to do.
It is tough to do unless you put your address and phone number on there where I can find you.
Well, but even then,
Yard sales do
courts
that.
say courts will tell you that.
Well, right, and then again, it
Gotta
may
prove that
be
they
a
put it
tenant, so who are you really going after?
Do you have a revenue side here at all for,
Well, there's a revenue side on building and
Permits
codes that
and-
he is going to bring before you, and a revenue increase on building permits and the such for the whole department.
lights and everything?
This department, revenue side, when we looked at it, hasn't been increased in
No.
many years.
Quite a while, but what the increases will probably pertain to are licenses, your actual charge that we do on craft permit fee. A craft permit fee is $30 for a craft permit. Well,
It takes us more to
Honestly,
administer that.
with your salaries, vehicles, overhead, that craft permit fee, when you just call for an electrical, plumbing, or mechanical inspection, should probably be a minimum of $50.
So we
And you have administrative on top of that.
will be bringing, and we'll be doing that before year end, before the end of this year.
We're not looking at big.
Market-based and competitive.
Yeah. I mean, if you can't recoup your money for your staff's time and
Losing money
effort.
on the deal.
Exactly. We should at least be paying the bills
Oh.
to do the service.
Yeah, all the taxpayers that aren't having any work done on their homes should not be subsidizing the person that is having the work
Right.
done.
Now, on new construction, you're already paying for those inspections with the permit fee But that will increase too. The building valuation data chart that we use from the International Code Council sets that, and they raise it a couple percent each year to keep up. We're not any higher permit-wise. We actually, in the last 2 years, implemented the tap fees that we weren't charging, and we were, spending more money sometimes when you run into water service on these rocky conditions, and it costs, say you're only charging $500 for a tap fee, and our public works staff goes out there and it's $2,000 for their labor, material, manpower to do the same thing we only charge $500 for. So we'd like to correct some of those things.
You've always been very attentive. I mean, whenever I've sent you something that some citizen or what sends to me, I mean, you're on it really quick, and I really appreciate that. And I've heard a lot of positive comments this year alone from having that extra person getting
It's
on
helped.
things. I've heard a lot of positive comments about that. So I think it is a good thing to have at least that extra half person.
And the chief, actually, I didn't know how much he really was going to miss the blight program, but he's told me 2 or 3 times, Chief Brown, that guys are doing a really good job. I know it's a hard job, and it's not very appreciative. And I said, well, but they have a job, so there's a lot of people that don't. I said, just be fortunate you have one, and then I told these guys, just make sure you're doing the right thing all the time, make good decisions, city's best interest first, and then do the job. You're going to get your ear wrung plenty of times doing this job, but you just have to have thick skin doing it.
So do we,
Imagine you guys hear it as much as I do.
from each
We'll
other.
be preaching to the choir.
Well, after they talk to me, then they call you anyway.
Right, just for fun.
You know, I had thought about blights. The city was very aggressive here the last couple of years, and it has made a difference on trees overhanging at intersections, and then obviously the yards or properties that are not kept to a standard. And when I was looking at one of the blight issues in town, I was asked to come out and look at. You know, to get that other half a body, why wouldn't we raise the cost of blights? Why wouldn't we have a blight notice of $500 per occurrence to the owner?
That could
Why
be,
wouldn't we do that to
Well-
pay for those? You know, you talk about revenue in, and if we're looking to bring in revenue, and if we have a problem with blight, I do think we do have a blight issue in June, obviously, with the foot of grass that's growing and the trees that are overhanging in some places. You know, if we really do have a problem and we really do need revenue and we really do need more bodies, why don't we charge $500 a blight?
But remember, on blights, you have to give them a 10-day notice, and in that 10 days, they correct it, then there's no charge.
well,
I understand, but there's an awful lot of them out there that are,
but
And you're not probably going to get half of those others to pay.
see, but my
it goes to their taxes, the owner's tax, right?
yes,
And a lot of
It can-
those don't,
it's
still don't get
assessed.
paid.
It's assessed to
It's
the
assessed
property
to
if
the
they don't
owner.
pay it.
Correct?
Yeah.
The owner of the property but what we
Not the tenant, but the owner.
no, it's not to the tenants, to the owner.
Okay.
But what we did, and it probably doesn't show it in here, we raised the blight mowing fee
A lot.
5 years ago, 10 years ago, because people were using the city as a service to cut their grass.
2 years ago,
And
remember?
we finally got smart, raised it quite a bit. And for those of you that don't know, to mow a blight on a parcel of property that's 10,000 square feet or less, which most lots are, it's $77.18 to mow it, plus a $100 administrative fee. It used to be about $25, and people used us like
Yeah.
we were the kid walking around the neighborhood with a lawnmower.
I'd hire you tomorrow.
So we did raise it, and our intention, but also by raising that price of the cost, was to get people to to be compliant and do it themselves, so we didn't have to come do it and then not get the money back.
To raise it even more.
So I do
Okay,
agree.
I'll caution you on that, because I'll caution the same thing the attorney told me. There has to be a reasonable penalty.
Well,
And you have to cover it,
exactly.
and
do
you
you
have to
define that?
justify what you're charging them. And I justified to you guys by 15 minutes of Sarah times here and 15 minutes of Sarah's time and Mark's time and all of that, added all up, and I came to about $85, and I said, so to the attorney, is $100 reasonable? And she said, yes, you could go ahead and, so you still have to justify.
But we're only mowing 10
Now-
feet, right? We're mowing 10 feet, we're not doing a whole lot or anything like that.
No,
That's not true.
It's everything
It's
on
the
the
whole
block.
lot,
Okay.
If it's a lot that's in a developed area,
the whole
and
lot.
it's an infill lot where it's a new lot, but nobody built on it, and there's a house on each side,
Okay.
I don't know why, but we have always, previously, the police department's had it the last 10 years, they would only mow the same thing 15 feet. When you have an infill lot, we always mowed the entire lot to keep the rodents, snakes, things like that down, only on infill lots. Everything else that wasn't adjacent to a developed lot with a home on it, we mow that first 15 feet. Now, the 8 feet you're seeing is a street maintenance program through the engineering part. They do that to make sure that the grass isn't growing up behind the gutter pan and between the gutter pan and the curb itself. That's to prevent further damage in the streets. That's what that's about. But the mowing 15 feet back, we only do that on lots that don't have developed lots next to them.
Can you do like a cost of
We
living?
we
each
cut
year,
them as
though?
a
I mean,
partial.
Yeah, we can increase it some, but she cautioned us on increasing it too much.
Well, the justification is personnel.
Yeah. And we've increased it, we've added personnel to the department, so yes, you could increase it some.
You know,
You gotta.
150, 175, but I don't think we could increase it to $500.
If we were to increase the part-time guy to full-time,
It would justify an increase.
and we wouldn't have to, the fuel, as you can see in the budget, the fuel would increase, but the vehicles, I think we have that managed now. We wouldn't have to go get another vehicle. We have a used vehicle. We can take care of that.
We took the old water department vehicle and gave it to them.
Those older, I do have some older vehicles, and I'm not asking for a new vehicle. We don't need a brand-new vehicle, but the next year or so, we need to consider that. I've got an '03 Silverado, and 03 and '04, and mine's an '07. The '03 and '04, or the '03 I just spent $800 on. When we got it, it needed brakes, it needed several things. Wasn't in my department, so I mean, I don't know. It sat for a long time, too. My truck is the '07, and and that's why you'll see also in the maintenance portion of it, we've increased that a little bit because of the older trucks. We're not paying a lease purchase on the truck, but we do have the 12 truck that we have a lease purchase on it. But the increase in maintenance was because I just got dinged on my truck for $800 on, I thought it was a minor repair, and it wasn't quite as minor as I thought. So when your vehicles start getting older, the repairs sometimes mount up considerably. I'm not asking for new vehicles. Our budget's pretty much bare bones, but staff part, if you want to maintain and free up some more of my time to do what I need to be doing and train these guys, get them acclimated to doing this position, that's what I'm asking for.
I also want to point out and remember that we're no longer doing it on all blights, because on the empty lots, we no longer put a lien against the property because it was a waste. We determined in the end it was money we were never going to see.
Wasting.
And it was a waste of time and money for staff. So, but if there is a house built on a piece of land and we blight it, and they don't pay the bill, then we put a lien on the property, so that the next transfer of title on that, they have to pay it.
They have to pay it.
Right. That's reasonable.
Yeah. So we are doing that. So you may not get it the same year that you spend the money on it, but you might get it 2 or 3 years down the road.
And I'd also like to state that I'm not trying to increase the influx of money that the city is going to gain from cutting blights, because we don't get a lot of that money back. But the staff part and the police department actually had a blight officer and a supervisor. So there were 2 people over there actually, because, you know, that officer can't always be there. So there had to be somebody to fill in, to answer all those phone calls that you're getting. Hey, did you go look at this? Hey, did you write this up? We pretty much try to stay on top of all the, when we get a phone call, and that's one thing I stress. If you get a phone call or you get an email, answer it the same day. Call them back, talk to them, find out what the issue is, go out and look at it, and if it needs to be addressed, write the notice, get it in the mail, and we'll get it taken care of.
So I'm kind of hearing a consensus of if we raise rates and look at other revenue increases, that you're amenable to adding staff, adding that person to full-time.
Plus, all my staff, just in case you don't know, Sarah Brown handles all the phone calls, the licensing, the permits. We do all our own paperwork. We started that 5 or 6 years ago when they started eliminating secretaries, and then they went to a secretarial manager or somebody on each floor. All my guys do all their own paperwork, own letter writing. We don't have the staff to do that. They do it. They're taught right from the beginning. This is form letter. This is what you need to write. Here's your blights. Here's your public nuisances. Teach them how to do it. First thing I do is take them over to the county. We work hand in hand with the county. We also do, the public may not know, we also do all the county inspections.
And
I help-
Milford now too, right?
Yeah.
Milford now, too.
Yeah, Milford too. So we've got our plate full. I'm not saying we couldn't
The more
survive.
revenue you bring in, the more it's able to pay for those extra folks. We're at a point where we just don't have the money for those extra folks, so if we can bring in more revenue, we look at more folks. I think that's what,
That's what I'm
You
saying,
were
is I
getting
think we can, before now and year end, before this budget starts, go ahead and shoot for the additional revenue charges to get in before you for approval, so that it justifies putting this back into the budget and get that all balanced. I'll get it balanced in the budget to reflect that, but then we have to carry through to make sure it happens.
With the Building and Codes Department and even the blight program, all we're asking for is the minimum requirements. All your building codes are minimum requirements, the same as your blights. We're giving you a minimum requirement that you have to meet. We're not saying your yard has to be the Taj Mahal, but you have to make sure you pick things up. You don't leave things around that are unsanitary, unsightly, unsafe to human life or limb, things like that.
Speaking of which, we've got more meetings 4 nights this week, so I haven't mowed my yard yet. So
Good to
Don't
have
you
that
want-
address.
don't hit me up.
Well, I almost
I'm
came
hoping
last
Friday
night.
night I got a night off to do something. So
I almost came last night, but I was mowing myself. Got to lead by example.
yep.
I haven't mowed either.
Might get a blight.
Okay. I will take it that direction. I will have to show the revenue increases, and then Mark and I have to follow up to make sure before December 31st that we have this before you to equate that out. Okay?
Any further questions, gentlemen?
Thank you.
Well, thank you guys. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Okay, we'll have to, like you said, increase fuel too.
Yeah, I don't think we have to go too much there.
No, but some.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Cheryl, this budget, before we start the next one, when I was looking at this increase in phones, and we've talked about it for a couple times, I think one time you told me that there was an agreement that if a person was to use their personal cell phone, that the city paid a percentage of that cell phone.
Smartphones, on smartphones.
And on Verizon's program.
Right.
And what was that percentage?
The flip phones, we pay that 100% for the worker. But if there's a smartphone, for instance, all the department heads have smartphones, we pay half of that, and it ends up
don't.
saving the city money. There's 2 exceptions to that.
There's over $100,000 worth of cell phone bills. How could that save the money?
No, I'm talking about on the smartphones, only on the smartphones.
That's the only way we get that adjustment, is if you're a city employee with a Verizon plan and use the city's plan.
Right.
Well, that's not on our bill, though.
Right.
Yeah, what he's talking about. But Smartphones, Jim Gurman, myself.
All the department
The
heads.
department heads have smartphones so that we can answer emails and text and do all of that. We pay half of those, except for Mr. McCaffrey. And he got an exception because he doesn't use his for personal use. He uses it for business only. He carries 2 cell phones, a private one and a business one. And so other than that, all of the rest of us signed up to pay half the bill. So we pay half of the bill on the smartphones. Otherwise, if we didn't, it'd be at full charge, because no longer is cell phones charged back as a taxable income. So we just pay it and use the city cell phone as our own personal/business phone.
The phones too.
Over $100,000 worth of cell phone expenditures in the city. I think we have room to save some dollars
I
there.
don't, it can't be 100,000.
Oh, there's
There's only
120.
3,000 a year, a month. I don't think it's that much.
No way, it's mine. Mine's a flip phone.
And plus, I think the expenditure comes entirely from the city, and then the city, it's reimbursed out of our payroll,
Yeah.
so it's half of that, at least.
On the ones that are smartphones. I'll look into that. I showed that to you once before. It wasn't $100,000.
Up until 3 or 4
But-
years ago, the city's communication source was KCOM two-way radios.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if we want to go back to two-way radios, it's gonna be very expensive. Very, very expensive. And you're not gonna have the service that you have.
You know, as an example, 75% of my phone usage is city.
Hmm.
And I wouldn't expect the city to pay my cell phone bill.
You're an elected official.
I'm saying,
Mhm.
I wouldn't expect the city to
Mhm.
pay my cell phone bill. And 75% of my cell phone is used for city.
Hmm.
But
I'm just making that statement. I think, when I look through this and I see telephone and telephone and telephone, and you start adding it up, and I don't know what's cell phone
Okay,
and what's
okay.
not cell phone.
Okay, we provided you the cell phone stuff. We didn't provide you all the rest of the phone stuff. All of these, as they add up, yeah, that adds up to 120,000, but that's for landlines,
Everything?
iPads, internet, internet service, and cell phones. That's all of
It
it.
doesn't break
It's
it down to
internet,
just cell
it's cell phones,
All telecommunication.
it's all telecommunications is in that line item that says telephone. Because it's all the iPads, it's all of the internet connections, it's all of the cell phones, it's all of the landlines.
all the computers and vehicles and
Yes.
patrol units and everything.
All of it. Patrol unit, Wi-Fi for
Seen an
patrol
awful
units.
lot of it.
Do you do your
Wi-Fi
reports in
for
the
pat-
vehicle when you do them, or-
No, actually, and that's something that I'd like to move forward in the future, is have computers and not have the iPads, so I can do all of my, even my black guys, when they write something up, they can generate that paperwork right there in their vehicle and send it to the printer. When they come in, it's sitting there to be signed. They don't have to.
That's what I was wondering.
Right.
We have iPads, and they're not useful to do that paperwork there. They're useful for GIS. They're useful for finding documents and
Take
things
a
like
photo,
that.
too.
Yeah, and pictures, great, but they're not a way to
That's
generate
right.
your
Yeah.
office paperwork.
Jim, isn't the Wi-Fi also charged to telephone, Wi-Fi charges?
Yes, for the iPads.
Yes.
Yes.
So
Yes.
the Wi-Fi charges.
All sources of communication.
Yeah. Everything gets charged to that. It's not just cell phones.
I had to ask the same thing because they tried to persuade me 5 years ago to have a city phone, and the previous city manager, Mr. Barnes, laughed at me because I carried 2 phones. And I said, well, you have a policy where you don't want us using your phone for emergencies, that's it. I said, so if I've got my phone and somebody needs to contact me, they can, and it's not costing you a dime. That's why I kept mine. But it's becoming easier and easier if you have a smartphone that you can communicate with anybody at any given time. With the two-way radios, if you weren't sitting in your truck when they called you, and then your supervisor was mad at you when you came back. I called you 4 or 5 times. Where were you? Well, I was doing an inspection here and here and here. Well, when were you in the truck? In between driving across town. So that's when they moved towards the cell phones.
I used to carry 2 cell phones, but that was just 2 of them I was losing, so
Yeah.
just go to one.
I'd be
And
all
they-
right if we didn't have phones
Cell
at
phones
all.
more efficient.
Back to the old landlines.
And I used to carry 2 cell phones because of, in the interconnectivity. When a department head sign off on the sharing of the costs, they're saying that you have access to all my private information and
All
all
your
my
records.
private calls. You know, it's no longer, it's a public phone, so we're aware of that. But we agree to pay for half of that.
We're way
I
behind,
asked all
guys.
these questions because I thought I wanted one, and I didn't really want to be that able to have somebody get a hold of me.
We're nearly 2/3.
Let's roll on.
Okay,
Thank you, guys. Have a
but I'll
good
get
evening.
you a breakdown of all telephone charges.
I'd like to know what we spend for cell phones annually. That's the only breakdown I'm interested in.
Okay. We gave you that.
Cell phones or
Yeah.
wirelessly connected devices?
Wirelessly connected.
Well, the reason I ask, our Verizon bill is approximately $2,500 a month. That's 90 cell phones, but that includes 10 mobile units at the police department at $40 a month to connect the police cars. That it also includes 2 of the Drug Task Force special pieces of equipment that connect wirelessly, and 2 pieces of wireless equipment from Grandview Plaza that they reimburse us for every month, of those 90 devices,
$2,500 a month.
Mm-hmm.
approximately. I can give you an exact, I'll give you an exact breakdown if you
No,
want.
that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew it was less than 3,000, but it's like,
Yeah.
It's not 120,000 a year.
Right. But of that, everybody who's issued a smartphone in the city, it costs us $51 a month for that smartphone, for the iPhone, and everybody in the city except one person pays half of the cost of that. But in my department, for example, I have 2 smartphones, and it cost the city $650 a year for those 2 phones, after I and Mike have reimbursed half the cost. So, but I mean, I can give you a breakdown by department if you wish.
That's a better plan than I've got.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the smartphones, it is cheaper for us to give a department head a smartphone and get half reimbursed than it is for us to give them a flip phone.
Yes, that's true.
I'm ready to move on.
Planning and zoning.
Mr. Yearout.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. It'll be brief. The bottom line in ours is it's showing a reduction of the city's portion of our budget pays for everything except for the salaries, and then half of any contractual service costs, which the past 2 years has been for the comp plan. Total budget as in 2014 was a total of $38,000, and after Cheryl got done with her acts, it's showing $26,050. So it's a little over, not quite $12,000 reduction in a $38,000 budget. So, and mostly it's office supplies. Our biggest expense to a great degree is the legal publications that we have to go through with everything that we do on hearings. We've got a legal publication to call a public hearing. We've got legal publication costs we cover when we get done, whether it's pay for the ordinance that you pass or the resolution the county passes on zoning cases. Those are, to a great degree, our biggest items. The one carryover item on contractual services that we're showing, you'll note, and I'll, for what it's worth, in 2012, we did the community survey. That, if you'll recall, that was one of the processes we went through to really engage people in the community that you never hear from any other time. We did a massive mail-out that got a high rate of return and gave us a very high confidence that it really was reflecting what the community thought. One of the major items they were concerned about was blights and code enforcement issues, as you just talked about. We'd like to do that. It will have been 3 years. It'll give us a chance to find out and measure whether we're making improvements in the areas in which you're spending money in the various operations within the city. We had proposed that be a split between the county. They've come back and said, no, they do not want to participate. So the survey we would be doing would be just city only. But the estimated cost, I've talked with the folks that do that for us, and we're budgeting $15,000. So our base, the manager's recommended budget would need to be bumped to cover the full $15,000 because the county's not going to participate.
Yeah, we just got word yesterday that the county's not going to participate, so.
Would that have been under 749?
Yes.
Okay.
And the original intent of this, when we sat down and talked about that, it was to go ask the county to participate, and they have, as of yesterday, told us no.
I did submit the budget to them Monday on that and requested that, but that's been rejected.
They've said no, so if you want a community survey, we'd have to bump that back up.
Every 5 years is adequate.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
So especially since we just added the extra black guy this year, I don't know that we could be getting a true reflection of how we're doing with lights.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe, until we, and then now if we get another guy
That's
on
fine.
full-time,
Makes sense.
would get even better by the time we went to 5 years.
Okay, makes sense. And the other thing that I wanted you to note on the planning, the budget, was this is another area where we have seen that the rates are undercharged. We're not even covering the cost when we send notices out on someone's notice on that if they're doing a zoning change. We're not even covering our costs on a zoning change. So that's not fair. Why should all the citizens pay for someone who's asking for a zoning change and when it has no impact on the majority of the citizens? So we're going to be asking for rate increases on those.
How long have we known about that?
I've known about that for as long as I've been here, and it's been discussed, and it's just never been clear to bring forward. It's always
Yeah.
been buried with other items.
And so
I don't
We're-
remember anyone
we're getting more
telling
aggressive.
me about that.
Well, we
I
started
never-
talking about all this stuff really seriously last year when we started talking about new ways to bring about new revenues. Just the lack of staff time and lack of time to move things forward, we haven't brought things forward, but we've got to get these things done. We reached a point where we can no longer ignore any of the loss of revenue. And we've made great strides in all of that and getting everything in order, and the budgets are understandable now and everything's in the right place. But it's the examination, and I know you guys are going to get tired of me saying this. It's not an expenditure problem here, it's a revenue problem. So we need to move it forward. We need to start increasing revenues.
Make it balance.
Yeah, make it balance. So we will be coming forward with that as well. This is a simple budget.
Besides rate increases, is there anything else that you can think of that your department could enhance revenues with? Are there any other services or whatever?
No, we don't get credit for it, but we do process all the daycare activity that goes on. There's 60-some-odd daycares within the community, and the annual renewals are processed through our office and coordinated with fire department and code enforcement to deal with the annual inspections that are occurred. And we do collect that revenue, but it goes to the city general fund. And but those fees were set up. We actually do better on that than we do on zoning cases, which entail a whole lot more work. So
Well,
we look for every way.
Work that's put forward.
Yeah.
yeah, we need to equate, and that's what has been lacking, is equating the work that's done to the fee that is assessed.
Yes.
We started doing a lot of that when I got here early on, and then I've been pulled away for different reasons. And it's now we've got to get back to the idea that we have to equate the work that you're doing to the fee that you're charging, so that it makes sense that you pay for what you're asking for in services, so that the rest of the citizens aren't paying for that. So that what you are paying then for in taxes is what everybody should pay for in taxes, and that's police, fire, ambulance, and streets. That everybody should equally pay for that. Not, I rarely do anything on my house, so I don't think I should be subsidizing somebody's building permit.
Agreed.
A good part of the time that we spend, that I spend dealing with people really are, I work very, very closely with Mark's operation. And in fact, a building permit application comes in, and it comes to me before it goes to anybody else, because if there's a zoning issue, we've got to get that rectified before that. But a lot of times, people will come in inquiring about, can I build, how big of a building can I build here? And that ends up in my office. And I spend the time talking with those folks. So I deal with fence issues, accessory building issues, other items with respect to, that really ultimately will show up on the revenue side through a building permit application.
Which is another reason we went the direction we went last month, and you'll start hearing about this in other cities, that they call that development services, because they tie so closely together.
Cheryl and I have talked about it. I've been talking about it with management since I've been here, of seeing that. That's the trend with other communities. It's the trend to bring those kinds of operations together, so because we work so closely together. The issues that a lot of them Mark just talked about, I've been heavily involved with, and actually deal with that on the county side. Sign code, I'm the sign code administrator for the county. We just don't have very many issues in the county, but occasionally get a phone call, somebody complaining about, hey, there's signs out here out in the right of way, and I go pick them up. So,
Are there efficiencies to be had combining those departments?
I think there's a lot of efficiencies and a lot of it probably would come more from administration and management level than it would just on an operational standpoint per se. But yes, and a lot of that stuff happens anyway. It happens in spite of what the organization chart says. But that's because, in my opinion, there's great people to work with. I've done this in so many different communities, and the guys we've got on the code side are just super to work with. And we coordinate closely on the county issues with the health department on a lot of things, and with public works on a lot of things, with new construction on driveway locations and verification. So there's a lot of things that go on, and it's just, it doesn't show up in the org chart, but it's stuff that we do every day.
Okay.
So,
I'm good.
Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Young.
All right, thank you. Take a quick break.
Break time?
Yeah, let's take a break.
How many minutes?
5 minutes.
5 minutes?
For that period of time. So we're gonna look at that, but it just seems to bloom.
Are we on economic development?
EDC, yeah. Let me start before you talk, Tom. And on the EDC budget, this is another budget that was reorganized, and then we added something new to it this last year, and that was because originally, when I arrived, we had placed into the debt service the IRBs that were related to Ventria and Capgemini in the debt service fund. And the auditors advised me to do that. Then the attorneys found out that that's what I did, and they said, oh, no, you can't do that, because then you're going to be in violation of the agreements. And because it's not a debt service, it's not a debt of the city, it's an economic development package. So in order to be in compliance with the way it was structured, I was asked this year for the 2014 budget to move it back in here. So when you see that mill levy jump in EDC, it's because I had to place the debt for Ventria and the Capgemini building into here. Now, it was structured for that that someday the revenue would offset the expense, but it hasn't. And so that's why the mill levy increased. So it went from debt service fund to here. And then from the beginning, we changed from EDC back in 2011 was they were their employee salaries, everything was run through the city budget. Now it's simply a contract service. And the line item under contract service, let's see.
749?
Yeah, 749 goes to them. It's more than that, isn't it, 80? What's the contribution we make to you, Tom?
Your contribution, 127.5.
27.5. It says
It's
tax
under
distribution,
section.
that's not right. It says tax distribution. Oh, I know why she said that. Because the taxes it's taxes that come in for, and then we redistribute it to them under under a contract amount. Because we've agreed to pay about approximately
We get three-quarters of a mil.
$0.75 and then we retain the rest and the reserve to build up for other economic development incentives or projects. Okay, so anyway, Jolene put a new line item so that we could track that separate.
So 770 is the new...
770 is that line item, and she calls it tax distribution, and when I see taxes, I think, oh, we're paying taxes on it.
But that's really salaries.
Contract wages.
Yeah, it's the contract wages, and she specifically put a separate line item so we could definitely track that. That's the contract we have with EDC. Okay, and the other money in there, the other services, would be the money that we're building up for other uses. If it came along, a business wanted us to help pay for a street light for an entry, say another big Walmart came in and you need to help pay for a traffic control fixture there, you would have a little money to contribute to it. You wouldn't be able to pay for it, but if any incentives whatsoever or any fix of the things that we needed to do would be there. And when I say fix of things to do, that would be things like we own two ADC economic development buildings, now the ACCT building, what was the Jupiter building, 2718 Industrial Road. We have to fix the roof and fix things on occasion. So that's the money that's set aside for those kinds of purposes. Well, it's also in here this year was an unusual year because we then got money from Capgemini on the closeout of Capgemini and roll over to ACCT. And you'll see that as the rent income is increased at the 473, 492 is money in. And what I have not put in here, and I'm going to have to amend the 2014 budget to put the actual revenue in and expenditure out of the money. The rent income was supposed to be just Capgemini rent. Well, now we got that clawback money in, and I'll have to amend the 2014 budget to allow that money to go in as revenue in so that expenditure could pay out for the improvements that we had to prep for ACCT. So you'll see me coming with a budget amendment for this very budget. Okay. And in that money...
Clawbacks for how much? What was the clawback amount?
Almost 400,000.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know the exact number. Sorry. I can't remember the exact number. And then we're spending out about 75,000 of that immediately. And then we spend 119,000 for the cost of the
upgrade.
real estate. No, the upgrade was about 75. The real estate was 100. Real estate fees, realtor fees we had to pay out was 119,000. And there was something else. Anyway, there is money left, and that gets us down to the revenue that I have not shown here, and it will just simply be banked. And when I adjust this final, because I'm getting all those final numbers now, I will have a final adjustment on all this to make that all work here before we close out the budget in August.
Will the reserve reflect that?
Yes.
That's where it will be reflected?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm just letting you know it's not final yet.
Okay.
I've got to get that all put together.
But we know what to look for.
And that's where then, if we know we need to fix the Jupiter building roof some more, that's where some of those repairs could come from. It still leaks a little bit. And there is a potential new leaser of that building, and so obviously if they're going to lease we're going to lease the building, it needs to be prepped for it.
It only leaks when it rains.
It only leaks when it rains, yeah. I don't think they want to get their equipment wet. Anyway, so
Water feature.
I'm telling you that at least that there is going to be that cushion built into this fund now so that we can handle those kinds of things and still attract business and do things with EDC for small projects or attraction of businesses, where before, in prior years, you had about $50,000 to $70,000. Now you're going to have a little bit bigger cushion, and it'll give us the flexibility, and then he's going to explain to you what their long-term goals are and what they want to do with future monies as well. that wraps it up for what I was going to explain to you. This budget is not final by any means yet.
Okay, thank you. You're seeing more numbers than I'm seeing, but that's okay.
Yeah, because it's not something that you work with.
And as you'll see from this budget,
He's
and
about
we have two things to present to you today. We have a revised 2014 budget, but we've had some additions, and we spent some more money. And then we have the 2015 budget proposal. I'm assuming you guys have got
Yeah,
that.
yes.
Okay. It shows us with a total funds available, $418,700. We have raised the salaries from 125 to 148, not due to our present employees, but the EDC feels like we need to go out and hire an additional economic development person to target industries, recruit industries, get involved more in a reach-out form of marketing, attend more conferences, and do a lot of target industries. So we felt like if you approve that change, sometime in the, I'm saying in the September timeframe, we might have another employee on board. We're expecting that employee to be in the $60,000 a year range. So that reflects both on salaries and payroll taxes, and then additional expenses of another $1,000 for their odds and end costs, and then the office raised that $2,000 for a computer and other equipment that would involve in that other employee. So bottom line, we have a expenditure total has raised from $247,000 to $279,000. Carryover has dropped from $171,741 to $139,741. I'm a frugal guy, and I don't like spending money just because it feels like it. We should. I want to know what the target is, why we're doing it, what the potential return, if there's some kind of measure. Well, this coming year, you're going to see more in the budget and expenditures on, there are going to be some billboard expenses. There are going to be some conferences. There's going to be those type of marketing things that we feel like we need to do in and around the NBAF. They're going to be very, we met with the CVB also today. We're going to have one color. We're going to have few words on the billboards, but it's going to be, Junction, available land, Junction City website. Something like that, something very simple. It's going to be, we're going to try to find something up into the NBAF area. We're going to have something between Topeka and the Manhattan turnoff. We're going to have something from the west. Right now, we're planning one down here at our first one at Grandview. So we're talking about the verbiage, and those costs will go on. If you haven't any questions about the 14, I'd like to go over to the 2015 budget. And the only thing in there that we have that when we prepared this, we've got the expenditures. We have, again, let's start at the top, $390,000 total available, which includes some of that as carryover from when the consolidation took place. There was money funded out of the EDC to do that. We have $27,000 of that left. We have the $112,000 carryover from 14 projected carryover. And so with the city's contribution, the county's contribution of a $500,000, we have total funds available, $390,000. And that will be spent again on $195,000 salary. But down and around into the marketing, we're going to pick up that a little bit with the NBAF, focus on that. And then the Team Kansas, that's a three-year commitment. We just finished up our last our first year with that. We have 2 more years that we've committed $5,000. We met with Kansas Department of Commerce yesterday to talk about how they're going to focus, because they have the same concerns we have. Are we spending our money in the right place? Should we be spending more going to site consultant conferences or right now, Susan, this afternoon, is in Chicago with site consultants at a ball game, and how they do that. Is that worthwhile? My thought to the Kansas Department of Commerce is I'd like to spend that money and have them come and visit our communities, see how what an hour of travel time in Kansas does as opposed to an hour of travel time in Washington, D.C. or Philadelphia or something. And they took that as a good comment. I don't know if it's going to gain any traction because it's hard to get a busload of site consultants together for a day. But we had one in. We've heard from them. They want us to connect with another similar city with a Army facility and some other things similar to us, so we'll be working with them. But with the one of the I don't see what I was heading for here. We had something in there for, and I think Susan did change that. We had something in there for marketing the Capgemini building. Well, fortunately, we don't have to do that. That was a neat deal where we heard from them today, and I'll read that to you, the good news. Susan just had sent them, things going well, question mark. And this is from Jimmy Griffiths, who you met. He says, I wanted to express our sincere thanks for all of your efforts through this process. We are now in the location full-time, quotes, and things are going very well. Our client actually was on site last week and was thrilled with both the facility and the quality of the workers. This means that more than likely we will see faster growth at this location than we had originally expected. We can't thank you enough for all your efforts in getting us into that temp facility for the first week. We arranged to Cloud County would have set up a temporary training facility for them. That process enabled us to get started in time with our first training class and get the employees somewhat acclimated to the process prior to that client visit last week. Thanks again, Jimmy Griffith. So that was really good news. So we've reallocated that to more marketing and more. Yeah, we just put it back up in there in the marketing and salaries and stuff for the new individual that we plan to hire for recruitment of companies. Other than that, it's pretty much like it was last year. With the the rent stays the same, the office expenses are similar. We've just got to, I think, focus more on the target industries, which we expect to be the life sciences, biosciences. We do have a proposal we're sending out tomorrow for a 50-acre project, a 900,000 square foot distribution center that, got a shot at that. And that would be, I think, 300 to 400 jobs is what it entailed. So we'd like to be in the game there. I think we're seeing a lot of attention. We have someone looking for some land in the Chestnut area. We have activity out to the west, and so we're pretty optimistic about the year coming up. We just need, this is coming from Tom Wygan now, we just need to do that capital campaign, get a hold of some land, have something to market for a really nice business, something that will really hire some high-paying jobs. But in the background and in the forefront, we'll continue to address long-term positioning this community as a community that deserves attention, is a consistently good community to hire people in, obtain available employees, and build our image as a community that can deliver what it says it can and take advantage of its location. We just, I think I sent everyone a copy of, what was the name of that, Nerdworks or something like that? That Junction City was rated the 14th best city in Kansas to live in. as far as amenities, housing costs, affordable housing, and those kinds of things, jobs and that. You just can't get too many reports like that. Many of our neighboring cities were not mentioned, but we were right up there, and some of those who are normally rated high and great places to live were on the list. So we were very pleased to hear that kind of information. We'll have that out everywhere we can put it. So, asking for your support to continue with where you've been, and we will continue, hopefully, to put the money where it can be best used and get a return on it. Again, as I've told you before, and I've been here a little over 2 years now, we're trying to build a foundation of stability, trust, both among local elected officials, local developers, realtors, the outside, the Kansas Department of Commerce in the region, that this is a place to be considered for, living, working, and investing. So that's not easy, but it is, if we continue the consistent message and do the right things and develop the right relationships, I think you'll start seeing it. I feel like we're seeing it already.
Department of Commerce was really pleased with how we handled, as a city, the ACCT transaction. And
we got high marks from the Kansas Department of Commerce on bringing everybody together.
Hopefully they'll send some more things our way.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. And
I think we'll see that, because I know initially when we talked to them about why is that call center still there, well, we don't believe you have enough employees, or your cost or your quality of workers not. And I said, really? And so I think we're proving them wrong, and I think if we can make them understand that we do have a quality workforce coming out of the fort every month, and they're trainable, and they're accountable, and they're responsible, and on point, then I think we've got a good conduit to more jobs.
It's the same with any business relationship. You have to nurture it, and as I said, they came back very, very blunt with it and said they were impressed with the way that we handled it. They were surprised by it. And I said, well, you shouldn't be. We have good people here.
Jimmy Griffith said that night it was the fastest, and really it was the fastest. I've been in that business for 24 years. And it's the fastest I've ever seen a deal come together, and the smoothest. There was times it could have been derailed, but we saved it, and we had the right facility, and we proved that we could partner together and we could deliver the workforce. And so they didn't ask about anything but the workforce. That's a big deal anymore.
It's working.
Real estate was cheap.
Sorry?
The real estate was cheap. The rent rate.
Certainly.
It was amenable to.
Certainly good. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It was a win-win. You will note that he's adding this new position with cash carry here and next, but it won't be until the following year that
Be a full load.
there'll be a full load, and you would have to understand that going into this, just to point that out.
The carryover will be reduced.
The carryover will be reduced, and although they can use some carryover for that position in the third year, it will not fully fund it. And so the commitment that you would be making here, unless you wanted to lay them off after you hired them, was that in that third year, you would be picking that up.
Let's see how
Maybe
they
asking
do.
for more money. They're not yet.
May have to give something up to keep it.
Exactly. So,
Not
and
necessarily we would have to fund it. We may have to look at the budget and say, we don't need this if we need this. It's not necessarily.
well, that's what I mean by pick up.
Okay.
How you pick it up is your choice.
Okay.
But when I say that, I'm not saying that you have
That
to
we have
increase
to-
revenue
okay,
necessarily.
okay.
And it's how you pick that up, whether you pick it up through reductions elsewhere
Okay.
and in funding. That's the methodology you use is not my concern at this point. What I'm concerned is that you know and are aware
in advance.
in advance what you're looking at.
Okay.
Because I just want to point that out. I'm never going to tell you how you fund it, because that's your choice. But that is what I want to point out to you. And the other part of that is we have let them know that we're going to look at how we're going to be, what we're going to be holding their feet to the fire on this next renewal of their contract. And so between now and year end, we're going to probably reset goals or reset how we're looking at EDC, and it'll be more defined in the contract
Metrics.
what our expectations are. Okay, so that I want you to think about, because when we start sitting down after, I've told Tom and Susan, after the budgets are over, then we need to start gearing for that and looking at redefining what it is. And they put together a one-sheet sheet of some of their ideas. And so then after that, we'll start, the budgets are done, we'll sit down and talk about it. And Commissioner Landis is on the board, and he's got some ideas, and then we'll bring it to you guys and get your ideas. And all of that will occur between now and year end, so that we redefine what our goals are for EDC.
Your year-end report, hopefully we meet this budget and we have a good report for you. The goal of economic development is to bring in more than you spend. Hopefully your valuation, your sales tax, and all those things increase far more than the person that we hire through their efforts, hopefully. And I think the track record in the last couple of years, we can stand on that. And then this new individual, if they can really bring us into the animal science corridor and that business, as well as we land a major other industry, that's where you're going to get the payoff.
Yeah. So that's just
Makes sense.
just trying to keep you educated.
Again, it's not, everybody likes retail, and I like retail. I like all the amenities retail brings. Retail brings sales tax.
Doesn't bring jobs.
And property tax. Doesn't create wealth. Wealth goes out of the community. They don't pay their employees enough to buy homes and new cars. But it's good to have.
Yeah, generally speaking, they don't know.
So we're looking for that industry that will pay that $15, $20, $25 an hour in good benefits, so that we have some, what do you call it, cash, walking around cash.
Any questions of Tom on the budget beyond? He's
Just
not
one
asking.
question. How many salaried positions is this paying for? How many positions is salary paying for?
3, right?
There are going to be 3, yes.
And
Gonna
part of
be,
that,
and currently it's
accounting
2.
secretary.
60% of mine and Susan's full, and the next individual full.
Okay. So right now it's one full and 60 of yours.
Yeah.
And they're wanting to go to 2 full and 60% ahead.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
You want to go to
Military affairs?
military affairs. There is a correction before you pointed out. I saw it sitting up here and we run the numbers. Mr. Seitz, when we were doing this, when you look down at the office administration, that went from 2,004 this year to 10,000 next year. If I were you, I'd say, well, what? Because what we've done is I asked him to roll up the accounting, which is not only the accounting position, the Varneys, and the tax return, and his share of the audit is the $2,800. The taxes, payroll taxes basically of his, and his share of the accounting and the reception desk, postage, those should be rolled up into that 10. So we've got to take off those as expenses and add them to the carryover at the bottom. So we should be showing a carryover of $18,340. Again, I asked him when he started the budget to come back with me with what you absolutely need and talk to me a little bit about what you like, but I want to know exactly what you need. Well, he was very, I thought, frugal. He'd like to do more, and actually it turns out he could have done more with his budget, because he did carry over 19 from last year to give him $114,000 to work with. We're projecting expenses of 100, actually to take off that 72, so we're something around 95, 96 thousand for a carryover 18,000. John, I just talked to him this afternoon. Was concerned that he didn't have enough available to do some of the things that he'd like to do for soldiers. I think he does. I think we can do what he needs to do. We're going to pay what we didn't pay this year. We're going to pay the Governor's Military Affairs Council $10,000, where ED had been picking that up. Have been frugal on salaries. Our rent's fixed. Our utilities are fixed. Mac breakfast, we're expecting to lose a couple $100 every time we do that, and I don't like that, but John feels like that would keep some soldiers away if we raise that $2 or $3 a meal. Got the retreat in there. He's thought that last year we had $5,000 in the budget for AUSA for him to attend and Nikki to attend. He paid both of those. I asked him to only include himself this year and 1/4 of me. I'll spread that out. I'm going to go, but I'm going to spread it between the 4 divisions. And so that's $3,100. Other than that, pretty much the same as last year. He does have the 1st Infantry Artillery Division reunion he wants to go to, and he's budgeted that. I believe that's in California. You guys might know more than I do. But we're recruiting them and working with Wallace, what's his name, Buddy Wallace? To try to get them to know that they can hold a reunion in our community in Manhattan. We have enough hotel room for them if they will figure out how to work with us on that. So I think that's money well spent. Other than that, it's I think a decent kind of a budget. He wants to donate to the American Legion. The AUSA Social. We pay half, and the Manhattan MAC pays half of that. That's about $2,500 for our end.
Tom, the Mac breakfast, a couple $1,000 loss each year.
About $200 a month.
What's going to correct that?
Raising
I mean,
More people attend.
raising the ticket to get in.
well, we're losing because of some folks have lost their bill or
Some of that, but I think most of it costs, a breakfast is costing around 14, almost $15 with the gratuity and the tax, and we're charging 12.
okay.
Should we consider having a
If we
sponsor?
went to 15, we might lose some soldiers, but we would cover our costs.
If you had a sponsor for the breakfast each month, say $250, that helps you break even.
Sponsors, I don't know if you've noticed, but sponsors are hard to get
They're hard to
anymore.
find. John's very
We
persuasive. But we have to bridge that gap.
We've just had that. We just had that with Jim Clark on the teachers' breakfast with the activities. Is that we've lost money there, and Jim pays for the teachers, the new teachers, but we have not been charging. It's a 32% gratuity, a 22% gratuity, and almost a 9.5% tax.
Many of them don't even live here.
And we've been picking that up, and that's our loss. So I've asked them to go that way. They really wanted to keep that down, so I've negotiated with the Marriott to give us a break on that, and so that's going to help the activities. But we still are carrying a loss here, and yeah, right now we're ahead because there are late pay, and I still want to go to, you don't go until you have a ticket paid for. And we're going to try to implement that, make it easier online to pay by credit card.
And so the meal is about $15 meal.
Mm-hmm. And we're charging 12.
So why are we having a $15 meal? Why don't we have a $10 meal? Somehow we need to balance that. If we're $3 off per meal, and we do this monthly, and we do 50, 60 people, a couple $1,000 adds up, could be used to buy coins or something else in the budget.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand if we're stuck on a $15 meal, then it's time to get a different meal.
Mm-hmm.
If we're only
That's one way. We could go to probably a continental breakfast or something like that. Maybe people would be happy with that. But I know that we did get some complaints about when we had it out at the Riley Conference Center that where was our potatoes and gravy or whatever it was. There was something missing, and so they mentioned that. I would personally, I would personally, Mick, raise it to 15. I mean, there's no free lunches anymore because if you want a good meal,
You pay
it
it.
costs money.
And that is the opposite side of that spectrum, and I agree with you. We have right, left limits, and if that is where we need to go, then that's where we need to go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If people want to socialize and take advantage of that opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
then the $15 meal probably is the way to go.
Mm-hmm. We need to cover that cost. We initially, I said, John, we're not going to lose anymore, but he still feels like the soldiers. We'll work on the meal cost and see, and maybe do some testing about if that's a real problem. I'm not sure it is, but We've also got.
I'm not sure. I've sat with those soldiers, and 95% of those ranks, it's not a problem.
Yeah. There's very few BFCs out there. So anyway, we will address that.
Okay. Any other questions? This 40,000 contribution comes out of the general fund.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Mr. West, it's your turn.
Revised budget. You guys have that. I started on your desk.
Right?
Yeah. No. Two next. Let me copy this.
Oh, well, I have it in here.
I'll make copies of the revised one. Okay, what I've asked Mr. West to do tonight was to give you just a quick overview of what he has been doing since he arrived, and he's a short-termer here, since he's been here, but he has done quite a bit to, the goal was to try to assess what was going on over there, reevaluate what we can do to long-term make this successful operation. He can give you kind of a quick review of that and what he has done, with the idea that the city would be committed for 3 years after we sign the management agreement, and that is we're going to final draft between the two administrators, and then our attorney is going to final draft this week. She's creating that final draft so that we can give it to you and to the Opera House boards for markup, so that you can have your input and everything. Then that we need to have signed before August 14th for a management agreement for that we would contract with the management group, being the board, to do the day-to-day operations and the function in the Opera House with the intent that the city would still contribute it for at least 3 years and then reevaluate it at the end of 3 years. Mr. West's salary, 15 hours a week for the marketing director, the gas and electric, and basic maintenance of the building structure, not building maintenance, the structure of the building, the roof, the heat and air conditioning, the electrical, the plumbing. And we're not talking about if a toilet gets backed up, if something seriously goes wrong with the building structure, as almost like a lease tenant situation. And with that, I'll let you, while I go grab those, explain what you've been doing.
I guess I don't totally qualify under brand new, but I'm still pretty new. I'm in my 4th month now. And because I am so new, I actually asked my board if I could have board support. So I have 6 members of my board sitting out here. So if you have any questions that are long-term beyond the 4 months, they're happy to be asked anything about the operation of the Opera House. And let me tell you, surviving my first meeting with all you august people, I'm delighted to have 6 people sitting in the audience that have been connected to the Opera House far longer than I. One of the things that there were many things that were in the evaluation of what I was supposed to do when I got feet on ground in Kansas. One of them was to evaluate the Opera House operation and how it was happening and what was going on. I would start by saying that when I was the theater coordinator for the city of Phoenix, I had a meeting with the mayor where the mayor of Phoenix said that, it was not just me, it was a group of people, but I was the arts person, and he said to this group of people, if you will get every major professional sport that there is in Phoenix, and then he turned to me and said, if you will increase the quality of the arts in Phoenix, I will get the businesses to come to Phoenix that we want to have the growth that we want. And he did. He actually radically increased the size of Phoenix. But I have been in a position where part of my job was to look at quality of life and try to increase quality of life for a city. And that was one of the things we talked about when I was coming to Junction City. So part of the thing that I've been looking at is looking at how can we affect culturally and educationally the quality of life for students and young people and the community people and senior citizens. So that's been, always is an ongoing goal for the Opera House. In doing that, I also needed to look at how the Opera House was just operating, and there wasn't any kind of software program that under which the Opera House was operating. They did a little bit of Outlook. There wasn't even QuickBooks. There was nothing over there that really was a management tool to be able to report to the board more efficiently or report to you more efficiently. So one of the things I did was do a full analysis of what's the best way to put in an arts management software program. We identified Event Pro, which is a program that we're going to actually do the inputting ourselves, but it is a program that we'll own. The board, my foundation, approved $5,500 to buy Event Pro. At the same time, I applied to the state for a state grant to underwrite the cost of the software, and we received $27,500 from the state. Understanding that we were in a position where, as I explained it, part of my job was to organize with other people this nonprofit board, but set it up in a way that it could report back to the city in a way that you would feel comfortable turning the business part of the Opera House over to them in August. So we are now moving toward a software program that will allow us to report easily. It has about 150 different ways of crunching the numbers in the Opera House. It also allows us, when we're planning events or when we're planning programming, to build input full budgets into that and then actualize those budgets. And so we'll be able to know in the future if we're predicting well, and also if we're predicting the amount of profit, or at least the break even, whatever is the goal of each project. That'll all be very clean in the future. And that's been a challenge over there because everything has been on a variety of different Excel sheets and they don't talk to each other. And when I look at them, sometimes there's 3 different numbers that should be the same in 3 different documents. So it should create a cohesion in the Opera House that hasn't existed before. We're hanging on. When I first arrived, the Opera House executive director had stopped planning anything in the Opera House past May because she thought it was better that she not make more work that would, or production that would be inherited by a new person. So I started when I arrived beginning to book the Opera House. We now have things booked in the Opera House through the end of the year, and a couple of things that go into spring because there are some foundations that we have to be able to apply for by July 1 that won't actually fund until spring. But so there is some spring programming, but that's because traditionally those programs have been completely underwritten by foundations, and we're on task to do that. We're actively doing local fundraising, and we're on par with where we've been in the past for raising local support in terms of advertising or people in the community supporting the Opera House. As I said, I've only written 1 state grant so far, but it was fully awarded. I've got another state grant that's out there that I'm hopeful will be awarded. We just started looking nationally for support for the Opera House. As many of you might know, right now Kansas is not eligible for NEA granting, which is the National Endowment for the Arts, because of the issue with the governor, but we will be able to start reapplying, as will all of Kansas, in about 6 months. But those funds, if we start applying in 6 months, you would be awarded 6 months after that, and probably the actual funding wouldn't get to Junction City for another 3 to 6 months. So it's about 1.5 years before any federal funds probably would be here that would make a big difference. So in order to do something in the short term, I've constructed a letter, an appeal that has been going out from us to politicians, to sports figures, to celebrities, explaining what Junction City is, what we're trying to do, asking for them to either donate a performance to come to the Opera House in support of what we're trying to do and perform for free, donate the proceeds to the Opera House, or create something special by signing something and creating something that's unique and sending it to us that we can auction on behalf of the Opera House, or make a direct financial contribution, which is 100% tax deductible. We just started that program. The first thing came in today. We just started 2 weeks ago sending out letters. Bob Dole committed 4 signed books, personalized, that will come in next week. That's the first thing, with a very nice letter talking about the Opera House. But my hope is to get at least 1 or 2 people that will actually come here. Then out of that, I plan to build a celebrity board of directors for the Opera House that shows that people throughout the United States think that the culture here in the Opera House is important enough to support. And what I think we need to do, and it was one of the things that I was tasked with, was to help create a vision for the Opera House. And within that, what I'm trying to do is hang on to everything we were doing that was terrific, which is we've always done really solid children's programming. We're going to continue that. We have a program going where we'll be busing kids into the Opera House next year, where school kids will see things during the day, and then we'll hold them over and perform them in the evening. And usually the underwriting for the day show actually also pays for the evening show. So there's no direct cost to us to also do the evening show. We also have done a touring program where we bring touring people into the town to perform. We're continuing that. I've added more things than we've ever had in the past that are not touring, and I think we need to look at doing that. We need to do a certain percentage of things that are only available in Junction City, that if you want to see it in Kansas, you got to come here. And I think we can build not only Junction City audience, but we can get the surrounding towns to start think about the fact that they come to Junction City to see things. And that will create a differentiator for us in that people will begin to see that exciting stuff is going on. We also have just founded an academy, so that when people come in and perform, I've been asking them, while you're here, will you teach a master class? Will you leave something behind in Junction City while you're here? So that we just had the first one. David Malice, who's the New York Met opera baritone, did a master class while he was here. We had some little people, we had some high school people, we had some college people, and we had some community people. And we don't charge much. We charge $15 a person, because as this is starting, I want it to be accessible, and I want want people to come. We've also announced that we have a small pot of money. If there's anybody that really wants to come and can't afford it, we'll figure out a way to cover that cost. I mean, they'll have to show us that they need some kind of underwriting. But we don't want cost to keep people out. We want people to know that the Opera House is providing something that wouldn't be here if we weren't providing it. So the Academy is brand new. It goes throughout the year, offering a few classes each month. So we're also, in terms of grant writing and corporate support, having an educational component that's unique and kind of special to your area increases your point value when you're applying to grants. So it's a good thing to add to the Opera House. So I can tell you I work for a great board. We've got great support. Everybody's moving toward being ready for the August switch. We have been working, Cheryl and I have been working really well together, and my boards are, as I'm sure you are, looking forward to getting a good look at that document and chewing it up and putting it together so it works for all parties. So that's basically what I've been doing in the first 3 months I've been here. So any questions?
He talks faster than I do. Wow.
The most entertaining speaker we've had tonight.
Very good.
Thank you.
Yeah, very
Thank
good.
you so much. And in the Opera House right now, this weekend, the Little Theater is doing Aladdin Jr. with little kids. We've had a whole group of little ones rehearsing every morning. They're performing Friday and Saturday, Aladdin Jr. The following weekend, the teenage kids are performing, and they're doing Seussical Jr. for Friday and Saturday. And then we go back into I added a summer season this year because we hadn't had one. We're doing Churchill, which is a one-man play about Winston Churchill. After that, we have a Charlie Chaplin person coming in to do Chaplin, and then we also have Liz Calloway bringing her New York cabaret act to Junction City, and all three of those people are teaching master classes while they're here. So that's what's going on in the near future. Thank you.
A couple questions.
Oh, absolutely.
You go.
We get to talk numbers.
Okay.
Before you go, what is the revenue? What is the annual revenue of the Opera House? And I see that the 2014 budget was $346K. Where are we to date on that expenditure?
Okay, you need to understand the 2014 budget was projected with the intent that we'd take it over and we would be taking in revenue on our side, and that's not what it's going to be. What this says is not the actual what's happening. We will not be taking in revenue. So when you talk about financing of the Opera House, you got to zero out the revenue and minus from the 346, and that's the actual expenditure we'll expend to them this year. And then we took the $100,000 and put back in for support of the salaries for his position to be created. Now, out of the clawback money. I won't amend the budget to do all those corrections because it's more, we just won't recognize this as revenue. So if there's not money in, there's not any money spent out on it. Do you understand that?
No, I don't understand.
Even though we projected, we do our budgets so far in advance that by the time we adopt them and actually do them are two different things. In between the time you adopted this budget, August of last year, we intended to take over the Opera House. Since then, the decision was made that we would instead hire someone, and that the management group would run the Opera House. Therefore, no revenue will be coming in. There won't be a revenue source, and these expenses all changed.
Well, I guess I'm confused. Last year, it was very clear that the Opera House was going to be, in August, was going to be taken over by the board, or not the board, the foundation.
But it wasn't clear to the point that we had to decide on the budget what to do. So we put in revenue and expenses because there was not a definitive decision made. It was, we think this is the direction we're headed, but we don't know. And so the budget that was presented to you last year presented revenue and expenditures for us to take it over in 2014, starting August of 14 to year end.
Okay.
Because it was a what if we don't reach an agreement, what if this doesn't happen, you have to plan for it. So what you do is you just don't you just don't spend the money if the revenue doesn't come in. And so he knew that coming in, that even though it says this is what you get to expend. I'm saying, no, you don't. You get his salary, the 15 hours a week for the marketing director. You get the gas and electric, and you get a little bit of building maintenance out of us. That's it. That's all you
Okay.
get.
So to make it real simple, for a lot of folks wondering, what is the revenue versus the expenses?
For revenue to the city, nothing.
Okay.
Revenue that they're
Okay,
taking
so
in
the
as their
ci-
board.
Okay. So the city's expense is $162,000.
Yes.
What comes back to the city? Zero?
We don't get revenue from the Opera House. No revenue. This is
Okay.
We
commitment.
supplement their operation.
By $162,000.
Right.
So it costs the taxpayer $162,000 to supplement the operation of the Opera House. Everything else the Opera House makes stays with the Opera House, the foundation, right?
Yes, with the idea that they build it to an operation that eventually can self-sustain itself.
In 3 years.
Now,
That's the key. It's within 3 years from August 2014, it is supposed to be self-sustaining. Is that the agreement?
well,
It's not going to take
it's
care of
probably not
the
going to
debt
happen in
payment.
3 years, but the idea is to get it as close as possible to self-sustaining as possible within that 3-year time period. The long-term goal over a period of years, it was to get it as close as you can to self-sustaining within 3 years, and then we reevaluate that in 3 years on what we want to do.
That's what I was told when I was hired, that
And that's the
basically
way I understood
there was a 3-year commitment to move it as aggressively as which is why I was told
10%.
to look at
Yes.
every option within the building, to try to increase revenue out of the building, to try to move it toward being in a position where it could more aggressively pay for itself, where it could increase its audience, where it could become a bigger entity, and that we would
More value.
evaluate it in 3 years. That's what I was told.
More
And you're-
value to the
And you're
community.
very well aware of the stance of many folks in the community wanting it to stand on its own.
Absolutely.
Okay, okay. So the goal, the mark on the calendar is hopefully at the end of 3 years, we're self-sustaining, moving forward. We still have debt obligation, or is that part of it?
Yeah, the debt doesn't go away, and that's not part of it. The debt was a commitment for us to renovate a building that would have otherwise gotten demolished excessively, but it was done half through tax credits and half by the city. I mean, they
And half
returned
by
it to its
donation.
original state.
Or,
Well, there's some donation, yes, of course.
okay. Okay. Self-sustaining, 3 years.
That was a commitment that was made, is it?
Yes.
The conversation was
That-
3
well,
years
because
for them to...
If
That-
I could speak on behalf of the 6 people that are sitting out here, all of us know that that's exactly where we would all love to see it in 3 years, but we've also all had provisos within that say, as long as we see that we're moving in the right direction and things are that there is movement and that the Opera House is redefining itself, we might not totally get there within 3 years. I mean, it's a goal, and we all are aware of the fact that that's the goal. But there's a certain amount of stuff that you can plan, and you can have a 3-year plan and try to work the plan, and we're going to do that. But I can't guarantee you that we'll do it in 3 years.
When all this came up, the whole goal is that there would be substantial movement towards making yourself sustainable, as opposed to where we felt like things were just sitting.
Correct.
And so that's where you
Right.
come
Make
in.
the operation sustainable, not the building.
Right, not the building. Now,
That's the key.
you also need to
Pay off
understand,
eventually, anyway.
The way the budget was presented to you last year was because we don't know if we can find the right person, because we don't know, there was a lot of ifs, ands, and buts, that we presented you the building as a $346,000 expenditure with only $120,000 revenue, where actual commitment last year was $226,412. The commitment is less this year based on everything that we modeled and the way we set it up. Okay, because we changed in the midstream our goals of what we were trying to achieve. Okay, and he's very well aware of that. He understands what we're trying to achieve, and he's right. He's got a great group of people who understands what the community's desire is, and is working to attain that to as near as possible as they can, and with the intent that in 3 years we just reevaluated the whole thing.
So we're spending $60,000 less
Yes.
than we did. That's the bottom line.
Yes.
We're spending less.
Yes.
That's what folks want to hear.
Yeah.
That ended the conversation. Very good. Very good.
Does that mean I'm out of here?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Let me ask a question.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. West. Thank you.
Yeah, I forget that you don't always know how to read those state budget forms.
Well, yeah, when you look at 346 and you say, well, it's really not 346, it's kind of like 246, but it's not 346.
You gotta
I mean,
minus-
if you take this W and you minus this out,
You gotta minus the 120 that was revenue side.
it was really tough to follow that, Cheryl.
Yeah, we didn't have the revenue number to take
No,
out.
the revenue, you're only
Right.
seeing expenditures at this point.
Right.
Okay. You want to charge on, or do you want to go ahead and have a meeting tomorrow night?
We're here. I'd like not to come tomorrow night.
How long will this take, Cheryl?
Oh, I can breeze pretty fast. It depends on how many questions you have.
But you could.
Let's race through this and stay home tomorrow night.
Okay.
I'm with you on that.
Administration services, I try to keep as reasonable as possible. Where I set, the only thing that I was uncertain about, I did forget to the part-time, I missed $4,000 in part-time salaries for the payroll clerk. Her allocation to the administration budget, I forgot to put in there. We resplit how we did budgets this year on, and the reason you see a decrease in the full-time salaries is we resplit the salaries to resplit more into, we had not been charging anything to stormwater on administration and not enough on solid waste, so we resplit salaries, so you see a decrease there, so that your utility funds are picking part of the administration salaries up. The same a little bit higher on commodities, but not much. Computer hardware, even though we're not buying a computer, I did want to let you know that what I intended for that was computer hardware. When we got a new manager, they like things done differently, but he came in and bought all kinds of equipment that I hadn't budgeted, so I wanted a little money in case the new manager wanted something different. But the intent is to get a dual screen for the HR, screen and computer for intake and training in our intake room for HR training. We have no screen, and it would be more effective and efficient if we had a screen and a computer in there. That was all. I'm up in contractual services. Which line item was it? No. Went down in property tax. Travel and training. We were barely covering what it was taking us to get to ASUSA, and I was a little nervous about that, so I did increase it slightly. We can cut that back if you want us to be a little more conservative there. And the dues, I already know that they're going up on a couple of the, you spend money on LKM, the Flint Hills Regional Council is talking about a dues increase, and there's one other one. Dues go to 768. There's three major things that come out of that. I know the league dues and the Flint Hills Regional Council dues come from there. 768.
Is there a line item for the Flint Hill? I don't remember seeing one. The Flint Hills region?
That's the dues there.
No.
768
768 is where it comes from.
comes out of the dues.
That's that.
Flint Hills Regional Council.
I thought ours was 25,000.
It is, and then the league is 8,000.
league's about
And the league is
8 or 9, so-
8,000.
9.
So that's why when I added those two together, I'm going, ooh, it's got to come up a little.
I think both are based on population, right?
Yes.
Right.
So, and our population keeps showing a slight increase, so I knew that the dues were going to go up, so there's a slight increase there. And then I want to explain, I got a line item there that says grant, it says self-help housing, but that was really the closeout of self-help housing, but this last year, we ended up spending that money for a grant match for a grant that came up through extra money for spending on the Gatherings project. Well, now that that Gatherings is backed out, it'll still remain there for this year, but that is a good opportunity if you have a grant option available and you haven't budgeted for it, you're not going to get it. So I'm leaving in that. They're welcome to take that out. But even on the Gatherings project, I'm concerned. Well, there is a proposal that's going to come before you, likely for somebody to pick that up. But in order for it to make it work, the city will have to come up with more money. So I don't know whether you'll want to participate or not participate. I haven't been able to bring that back to you, and I'm hoping I can in the month of July. And that would commit that $40,000. But if you're not willing to do it, then we would be talking about needing that $40,000 probably to tear that building down. Because it is in a very condemnable state.
The same building?
The 617 North Washington. Either it gets fixed or we need to tear it down.
Let's get rid of it. Jeez, we keep
So,
throwing money away.
the $40,000 would need to stay there to tear, as funds available to tear that building down.
Okay.
Okay, so that's my concern on there. Either you put it towards grant match and we redo the structure, or we tear it down.
Okay.
The down below is the HR off deal for the wellness program, the safety program, and travel and training for HR. Any questions on that? We left the cemetery at $60,000. Last year, you're paying into the health department as this year. MAC remains at $40,000.
With the cemetery, did we use any of the money that came from Verizon Tower on the water tower?
I think that ended up not
Well,
going forward.
it didn't go forward.
Yeah.
It didn't go
Didn't put
forward.
the cell tower in, did they?
They didn't put the cell tower at the
They were
cemetery.
going to mount it, no, not at the cemetery, they were going to mount it on the water tower.
Well, then it goes back to the water fund, because that's water property. That's water revenue.
I just remember a different conversation.
It's a water asset. It goes back to the water department.
Because we were talking about allocating the money, if we put it in a different location, that would reduce the city's amount that we would pay to the cemetery. And that's why initially they
Oh,
were trying to...
that was if it went into the cemetery.
We didn't put that tower in over there.
Yeah,
No, we didn't.
Yeah.
I kind of stood kind of strong behind not putting it there.
yeah.
But
No,
what
it didn't go into the cemetery, but that's what was the idea. If they're going to get new revenues, a new revenue source, that would give us alleviate problem.
Because it ended up going back and doing what was the original proposal, which was on the tower anyway.
Yeah, it was to put it,
Yeah.
they're coming, and that's coming to you shortly. They finally had given in, and they're going to go ahead and put it back on the water tower. or expand on the water tower, and that's coming to you shortly. We're going to get a renewal agreement with Verizon on the water tower.
So anything that goes on the water tower is water fund?
Yeah, I mean, it's a water asset. It goes to the water fund.
Oh, I didn't understand that, because
Yeah.
I knew that we were trying to find a way to fund less to the cemetery, and I thought that water tower, or that cell tower was going to be that revenue to reduce what the city paid to the cemetery.
That was only if it was going to build on the cemetery property.
wasn't
The neighbors didn't want that.
It's a wash anyway. I mean, one thing, one to the others.
Yeah.
Okay.
So-
Cheryl, I had a question on 702. What is contract legal services?
That is the money that goes to our city attorney. It used to be down in other services, but because there was continuing questions all the time about what her expenditure specifically was out, we moved it up in 2013 as its own line item, so that is trackable. Now, that pays for not only Katie's, but our personnel attorney and any other litigation attorney that we might need to hire. In last year, it would have been
Union negotiations.
union
occurred, which was-
negotiations. We spent a lot of money on union
So that's-
So
negotiations.
we're good for 3 years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that number should go down.
Yeah, and we're purposely trying to not use our city, or the personnel attorney as much. So we could go ahead and try to budget that lower if you want.
Okay.
I never thought of that one.
I didn't know what all attorney fees that covered. And that's all inclusive, all of our attorney fees.
Yes.
And I heard Mr. Landis say that's a 3-year agreement?
3-year union agreement.
Union agreement.
Right.
So we
no-
only-
No more negotiation to pay for 2 more years.
Okay. What about our city attorney? Is that a time-sensitive
No.
agreement?
No, it's year to year.
So do we put that out for bid, or do we?
No.
How's
It has
that
not
done?
been put out to bid. It's not something you typically put out to bid, but you can.
It's not?
Most cities don't.
They don't?
No,
Do you shop around?
not usually. They find an attorney they like, and they usually keep for years and years and years. That's typical.
Interesting. Okay. Good
I
information.
have never been in a city that's shopped for, or went out for bid for an attorney. The only ones we go out to bid for is the public defender
Well,
contract.
I guess maybe going out for bid is not what I'm trying to say. A request for proposal would be,
Request for qualifications probably is more what you're talking about.
request for qualifications would be more appropriate for that service.
Mhm.
So I don't mean we ask who's the lowest bidder, so
Yeah.
that's who we're going to take. I didn't know how often we looked for legal services.
You can. It's just like on auditing services. You can go out for bid. You don't have to. There's nothing in GFOA code or law that says you have to. They were doing typically across the country 3-year contracts. Found out that was just cumbersome and awkward, and it's not. They're so heavily regulated anyway that they've extended the typical contract now for auditing, and now is 5-year services and beyond. Some of them are going as long as 6 or 7 years, but it's more typical right now of 5 years. And that's what our last 5-year
Prior to
auditing
having Katie,
services.
sorry. Prior to having Katie, we hired a city attorney who had their secretary, they had their offices, electricity, just take up. And so, going through that process, I think
So it was more expensive at that time?
if you adjusted it for inflation, I don't know what the budget was back then, but I think it was probably,
Okay.
it's basically a department. And,
Yeah.
you have a lot of specialists,
Yeah.
that firm.
When
So
you
if you
go
have a
with a-
problem, they're going to have it.
When you go with a firm, and particularly a larger firm, you're going to have an easement specialist. You're going to have someone qualified for drafting corporate business agreements.
Labor.
You're going to have a labor attorney. You're going to have
It's
all
all
those.
rolled up into this?
Yes, it's all rolled up into this one line item.
Would you talk also about, when you were talking about the city attorney, one of the good things, having someone more long-term as opposed to trying to every couple of years sitting out for bid. Because what you will find with attorneys, they all have their different styles, and it ends up affecting, I'm gonna say like the police department, because this one comes in, and when they first get in, maybe they're are prosecuting more stuff as opposed to plea negotiations, where they have certain things that they're taking to trial versus, and then there's always this period where you'll have the spike, and then finally they get settled in, and then things even out over the long term. But if you regularly change that, as you bring in, you'll keep having these spikes, which affects other departments and how, and what they're going to need and stuff. State done it with, what is that, the appellate courts, and they switched up. And what we saw was a huge increase in transcript costs while they were getting adjusted, because then everything they were doing, they were ordering these transcripts, which then comes back on the county and costing you huge dollars, and it took them about 2 years. And then
Before it levels out.
finally it leveled out, which in the meantime, we had to hire additional transcribers because we were that far behind, which then you get penalized by the courts for not getting it within. So that's the sooner you can get them stabilized and keep those in a longer period of time, the better off you are. That's just my opinion on some of that.
I will tell you in really
No, it's
small...
good information, because I didn't know. I didn't know how that worked out.
I will tell you in really small communities, because there's not a lot of options for attorneys, we're not small by any means, you have a difficult time finding attorneys who are qualified, number one, and number two, don't have a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
And we're small enough that conflict of interest would definitely be a problem. And we're not large enough that there's enough attorneys to have, like Kansas City, where there's all kinds of attorneys, and attorney across town, is not going to have as much influence as one next to City Hall, whatever. It's nothing against the local attorneys, because I'm sure that we could find someone qualified, but it's the conflict of interest. It is very difficult, and they will lose clients because they're the city attorney.
Well, I know we've had local city attorneys before.
Yeah.
And I know that recently there has been local city attorney, or there's been local attorneys in the city that have asked, why don't you guys use somebody local that knows the area, that knows the people, that knows the process, so some of those questions have come up. So that's all I'm asking is
The biggest reason
for my
is conflict of
education.
interest. The biggest reason I can give you is conflict of interest. And it's not necessarily going to get you a cheaper price.
Okay. Well, I just needed to know, because I've been asked.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
when you go with a major firm, you're also getting a lot of specialists. Next budget that I have in the book, unless you're ready for any more questions, is the debt service. Again, the debt service is managed by having all of the debts compiled into one fund. It makes it manageable, except for the quirk that we had with the IRBs for Ventura and Capgemini building that I had to, was forced then to put into the EDC fund. So what you see here is your GEO bonds and KDOT loans and your long-term payments that are listed in this fund. It lists them all out on page 4A, 4 and 4A. 4A has all the bonds and IRBs and the revenue bonds. Then the next page, there are some of these that are of the lease purchases. Even though they're a lease purchase, they're incorporated in debt service because they're either land or a building on a long-term payout. Okay. That would include Spin City, Tom Neal Industrial Park, and one other. The Bluffs. If there is a need to pick up the difference, you'll see on the Bluffs budget later on, the last 2 years it's paid out itself. It didn't at first. It paid out the last 2 years on its own, so I have not budgeted now for this third year or anything out to pick up out of debt service, which is a good thing. The Industrial Park and Spin City are the two lease purchases that are in the debt service fund. And that's why you see a interest and lease payable there, because they're long-term payments.
When do they come due?
Let's see, the Spin City, it is started in, we refinanced it last year, and it was another 7 years out. The Industrial Park started in '06, and it was 76 payments. Next year's the last year.
Good.
It's a $53,000 payment, annual payment.
Good.
So the final one, the Spin City will be the only lease purchase that will go over into here next year. Okay?
Spin City will go out to 2020.
Yeah.
Right, okay, good, thank you.
So those paid out. Let's see. Any questions on debt service?
The total budget is $511,852 short of the revenue going in, so is that
That's what's picked up on your,
out of the
Access.
general fund? Okay.
there is some cash carry that'll offset some of that. But you'll notice, which is good to note, that we did have some improvements in sales tax, and we had some improvements in the special assessments. It's slowly starting to increase in the amount of revenue we're receiving from that. So that's a good thing, both. Capital Improvement Fund. This is the fund that we were allowed through the audits, even though they were economic development clawbacks, they were not specific in the economic development agreements and where the money was to be taken back to, so that auditors allowed us to put it back in bank in the capital fund. That was money that we banked on clawback agreements in order to raise the money for the municipal court project. The municipal court project is going to be done, we thought it was initially was going to be all done in this year, and so we budgeted the entire amount out of this year's budget. I will actually have to readjust this now that we know for sure it's not going to be out of this year's budget, because he just told us last night for sure it would take us an 8 to 9 month project.
Right.
I will have to reallocate the 1.1 million and get it over into the 220,015. The money that I have coming in as revenue is what is left of clawback monies that we have to come in and miscellaneous revenues, and that 150,000 is for 2 projects. 73,000 for roof out of the law enforcement center, and I put the 50,000 for the parking lot, but we decided we weren't going to do that. So the 75,000, and I put on your table what we broke down and what we thought we would need for furnishings and equipment to final out the project. This, if I saw the engineering estimate, so to the project, and with this and the engineering estimate, if they both come under budget, it'll still be within the 1.1 million. Okay, so the courtroom, it talks about courtroom chairs, foyer chairs, conference room table and chairs, oops, spelled wrong, floor safe, security, the improvements to the security system, is the gate motors for the Sallyport gates, the metal detector, improvements to audiovisual, we'll take the one large screen tree that's in the hallway here, and then need 2 more for the other 2 stations that are allocated in the proposal over there. A floor sliding file system like you see in doctor's offices that slide back and forth because they're highly efficient and they hold a lot of files,
Just
which is what we need.
Just the 2 times or just as a slide, it's on
Slide.
both sides?
It's a single sliding. Single sliding. They're expensive, but they're worth it in the long run because they're highly efficient and you can get a lot of records in a very condensed space. Okay, it pays off in the long run. And we'd be paying a carpenter to move this commission table over to there so it doesn't go to waste. Beautiful wood, why not save it? And then with a small contingency. That's what we're asking for expenditures out of the capital improvement fund beyond. Now, and this would not be spent if we can get it within the 1.1 million. But this is my, I guess I call it my buffer for that. But anything not spent in the capital improvement stays in the capital improvement fund, and it would be used for other capital projects for the future. But I think we can still get it within the 1.1 million if all the bids come out proper and everything's okay. Otherwise, I'm asking just for an allocation of it, just in
Maybe
case.
some things will need to be eliminated from the original plan to get it there.
Right. Yeah. And we might be doing that. Because one of the things I'm asking him for is, right now, when in the budget is painting the walls. Well, staff can paint the walls. If the contract comes in and we say to the contractor, you can go to the lowest bidder and still not sign a contract, because I've done this before with other contracts. You go to the lowest bidder, usually, and you say, okay, I like your low bid, but let's try pen and paper to this. Let's see what else we can whittle this down to. And then you're after selecting the low bidder. And then you sign a contract based on what you've negotiated. So there's a lot of ways to work that.
What do you need a floor safe for?
We should probably talk about, if you wanted to know about that kind of information
And security.
that would probably be something you want to talk about in executive session.
Okay, forget it then.
Yeah. And we've got a long ways to go before the project
Okay.
gets there, so, and we would come back to you with some of this stuff, too, anyway. Okay, I'm moving my employee benefit fund. If you recall, we no longer pass through employee benefits for all the employees there. This is simply for the in and out of the retiree funds. When the retiree retires, they have the option of staying on our health insurance plan. They pay 5% administration fee to stay on our plan. You can increase it up to 25% if you want. So if you want to increase the administrative charge to the former employee, you can. Right now, it's currently 5%. We bring the money into this fund and out of this fund for that purpose. The reason I have it, we have a little bit of cash carry left, and the reason I put it in there is if there's an increase, for instance, in the healthcare cost in mid-year because we budget for beginning January 1 to assume that everything is at such percentage rate, and our renewal is in August, so that's 5 months, that there may be an increase that's not covered in budgets. At this time, until that money dwindles down, we would pick it up in the employee benefits fund if a budget was in trouble for that reason in benefits. Because this money was garnered with tax money for employee benefits, that's the way it has to be spent out. So we pick up, or if there is an increase in a claim on the city for some reason as related to employee benefits, we would pick it up out of here. And that's the only reason it's in there. Again, we don't spend it unless it's an employee benefit relationship to this budget. A year ago, we didn't this year have to, but a year ago we had an increase in a work comp rate that was not budgeted, and we took it out of the employee benefit fund. The Bluffs RHID, it has proven that the last 2 years, the first 2 years I was here, it did not pay for itself. We had to pick it up out of the debt service fund. The last 2 years it has paid for itself, so now it is now what I consider a trend. And so I budgeted for 2015 for it to be self-sustaining. Yay! I hope it stays that way. Okay.
Yes.
CDBG.
Yes, question, so if it doesn't, then how would you,
I'll have to
would you
pay.
just have to wait for another budget year before you then would put some
No,
funds
because I
back
can't
in
end the
that?
budget year with a negative fund. I'll have to get
Okay.
it out of our reserve out of debt service, which
Okay.
we've been building up a little bit. So, and we budget for a budgeted reserve for that reason.
Okay.
CDBG revolving loan fund, that's really not our money, but it's something that we have to monitor and control. You're the ones who authorize the final payouts if you're going to approve a loan. And they do have revenue coming in because obviously people are paying loan money back. And so I try to estimate what I think they're going to have left in cash by the time they pay out. This is one of those budgets that if they didn't spend all of what they had budgeted, then I have to amend it the next year if they want to spend it. So I would have an amendment if this $225,000 wasn't the right number. But of course they can't spend it if they don't have it either. Library, this is not, also a fund not under your control. They put in a request as long as it is less than 6 mills by your charter ordinance. If it's less than 6 mills, you have to grant it. So that is one.
Is that?
Hmm?
And
This
that
stays
is?
then relatively the same as prior years. So this one stays the same. But the sad part about this is if you're telling me to keep the mills at 48 mills, and they come in and ask for a mill levy increase, I can't, unless you cut your budget to pay for theirs. So there's some things that are just out of your control.
Right. But you can cut yours to 46.
That's if 3 other people agree with you, Nick.
Well, there's 5 here that I'm sure would agree that we would save money. Absolutely.
I have not gone over the revenue side with you. The revenue side is in your projected state budget form. Unless you see numbers in there that you think I'm just way out of line on, but you've already gave me some revenue ideas that I might incorporate in there. I am between now and the end of July looking into what we could possibly maybe expect with a franchise fee for all of the waste haulers, because that's something you expressed interested in, and if it is, this is something I can put in as a a new revenue source in here, and that you can either lower taxes or increase what you spend on streets, which was the idea of generating new revenues. So those are the kinds of things that between now and August 5th, when we and go out to publish, because by August 5th, the intent is on the August 5th agenda, I will be asking you, okay, guys, here's your final budget. Are you agreeable or disagreeable? What do you want to change? Because we're going to go out to publication and set the hearing for such and such date.
Is it something you gave us tonight or earlier?
Yes, you've got this.
We had it earlier.
You got this. So in here, on the revenue side of the budget, you have to look at the revenue side of the budget. I didn't give you a separate sheet on it because it's all in here.
That's okay.
You look at the revenue side of the budget, and then you have to decide whether you think I'm out of line or not. The question that always continues to perplex me why people ask this, but I will bring it up to you again, is they say, well, you took in $6.2 million in sales tax revenue next year. Why aren't you budgeting for $6.2 million? Well, because you cannot depend on sales taxes being an increase on an annual basis. You have to be a little conservative on that. So I'm conservative for a reason.
Makes sense.
Do not want to get yourself in a pinch because you didn't bring in the sales. We are too dependent on sales tax here, way too dependent. And if that has a blip in it, then you basically in trouble with your budgets. So we are conservative on how we do the projections, particularly on the sales tax and the compensating use tax. So that's the only thing that, otherwise we're fairly close to what we're actually taking in on the numbers. Except for ambulance, we did, because of the impact of Obamacare and everything that's going on with that, it's been an up and down on that, and I do have it increased as the $1,525,000 as the revenue coming in on that, because we're increasing what we're charging, going to get back from the county, because we're charging them more of the expenses. So that increase is explainable. Other than that, it's really pretty close to what we actually bring in. Fines and forfeitures, they haven't been tracking what we were anticipating that they would be bringing more in, even though we know cell phones usage may cause some more fines. We don't have a track record or anything like that. And they'd only been bringing in 765, 750-ish range the year prior. And we had budgeted for 900,000. They just haven't hit the mark for 2 years in a row now. So I put it back down to 850, knowing that, yeah, we might bring in some more new revenue from people on different charges, but they still don't think they can hit the 900,000. So. This budget, with all of the amendments and changes you've given to me, I'll start plugging those numbers in, give you kind of an idea of the effect of all of what we've discussed. Sometime in the second or third week in July, I'll ask you guys for another work session. We'll review kind of all the changes. If you have any more ideas or concerns, then you tell me then. Then we go to the August 15th with the final presentation. I give you the final presentation, you set the hearing, and then there's the budget public hearing, usually the second meeting in August, or delivery to them by the August 25th deadline. Any questions on anything else or procedure or anything you'd like to know further or me to research?
Randy West has nothing on you.
He was very fast.
So were you.
I didn't know that there was anybody out there that could talk as fast as I could. Surprised me, because he hasn't done that to me in any of my individual meetings with him.
If I could have 2 seconds, I'd like to apologize for my response last night during commissioner comments. I've kind of worked off and on for about 2 years towards annexation for a few reasons. I think we do have a fairness issue in this town, and I've already covered that. I'm not going to cover it again. I have several friends along Spring Valley Road that have never received services that they were promised, you included. So one of my goals was to work towards being able to provide those services that were promised several years ago and were never delivered. So to do that, we needed that document. So I felt like people were let down. I felt the way it was handled from 6 weeks ago till now was horrible. So I'm a very performance-driven individual, always have been. And that's what's carried me through life. So when I can't do something as well as it needs to be done, I'm disappointed. So I apologize for the way I responded, and I will do my best to keep my cool.
Commissioner Sands emailed me today and reiterated his concerns about what happened with the vote last night. A little bit of confusion going on. So the idea of the work session probably is the best next step, so that we can educate the two commissioners, because there are two new commissioners, didn't have the chance of being through the workshop that we all had. This time we have better maps and a better delineation of what it means, but really we can't go much forward until we have that report.
Well,
That
I don't
report
think
is
that there's no support on this commission.
The report is what gives you the information so that you can make a good decision.
So for all those people that were complaining about never receiving services, that was the opportunity. So if you choose not to do it, then don't complain that you don't have the services, because the chance was there.
I just want to say that last night, that motion was so confusing. There was two things going on. They said rescind. I thought we were talking about the motion before. We talked so quick and we talked so much and we beat so much crap down. When that motion came across to talk about annexation, I did not vote because I wasn't sure which way the daggone vote was going to go. The motion was not clear. It wasn't stated clearly. And when it tried to get cleared up over here, it confused the issue even more. So when the vote went forward, I did not vote. There was a 2-2, stated 3-1. So there is concern. There's a lot of concern. But I want to do it, and I want to do it the right way. And the right way is, don't talk down to everybody. Doggone it, you're part of the commission. Let's go forward with this and allow everybody the opportunity to do this clearly. Because some folks are smarter than others, some have different bits of information, but doggone it, give all of us an opportunity to understand what the heck the doggone motion is. And that wasn't done last night. It says rescind, so I thought we were talking about rescinding mixed motion. We didn't do that. No, rescind the motion from meetings.
Prior meeting.
Prior meeting.
From prior meeting.
That was just, that didn't make sense. It didn't make sense, not one iota.
It was a cluster.
Yeah.
It was.
So
I did not.
I agree with you. From day one, we first talked about it, and I mentioned this before, we talked about doing it in clusters, and all of a sudden, we're gonna just move forward, and to be honest, I've been irritated from the very start, and I think, but I think you guys have not done a good job of putting this whole thing together, and I'll put part of that on zoning and planning, but it just has not been laid out right.
Laid out in what way? Because I thought I was under the impression that we were moving forward with everything. So it could be my mistake.
Well, it was not, and I don't think everyone had all the information. I think some had more information than others, but I don't think there was enough to get a consensus to just assume that we were going to go ahead and do the list of, extension of services, to go forward with that.
I think we need
you
to
guys,
move, we need to talk about it in some kind of a work session.
Yeah, that's where I'm headed.
So that we can understand the totality and everybody on this commission knows how I feel about annexation, because none of you have been annexed. None of you have been promised. I'm the only one sitting on this commission that has been affected, and so I don't want that to happen to other folks. And so I'm very vehemently opposed, as the mayor made clear.
Yes, I said that word.
And so, we've got a good commission. And things were really headed south. And I think we just need to talk stuff out.
Well, that's why I brought it up tonight. I think I got to clear the air because I was up till 4 in the morning, mad as a hornet, and yeah, we got to get it out. We got to work forward. We're going to move forward.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We have to work together.
Right.
But we have to do it in a discussion. And point of order should have been called, because it said to discuss the issue. You went forward, you discussed everything that you had, which was totally out of order. Totally out of order. Robert's Rules of Orders were thrown the heck out the window. I wanted to bring a point of order. There was a motion on the table. We couldn't go forward with a point of order. Maybe I got to stand on the table and be stupid, but you won't like me very much if I do that. I guarantee it. Nobody in here will, and I don't need to be that way with this type of setting.
Mm-hmm.
They said discussion would come forward if we went forward with the motion. We discussed it, 1 out of 5. That's not the way to do business. If we want to discuss the issue, we bring it to a motion, we talk about it, but that motion was so unclear, I had no idea what we wanted to do with it.
I think we can do a better job overall.
Mm-hmm.
We sure can, but we need to do it with a work session. That's why I requested to correct that thing. It was just jacked up. And I stand 100% behind that. If I'm the only person saying it's jacked up, then I stand by myself. That was jacked up.
Mm-hmm.
There's other words for it, but I'm not using those words in this setting.
I will need clear direction then from you, because I was given the impression we were going to at least study and look at all what is available to annex. Not that we moved forward with any of it, that we were studying only what was available for annexation. And that's maybe where I'm unclear about what you guys are doing. Because studying it...
Discussion is a discussion.
When studying...
Versus, here's a discussion, but then there's all this other stuff
Right.
here to move forward. That's
Studying it and moving forward are two different things. Because in order to study and have the right answers, part of the law is that you have to know in front of you, before you take a vote to move forward with annexation, you have to know what it costs to annex. You have to know what it is what you are going to, you have to tell us what you're going to offer or not offer those people. And you have to know what those costs are before you offer them. And so that's that's part of annexation. But part of the annexation process, and I've done this in other communities, and it's hard for you to understand, but you have to move forward with the study before you can actually do the annexation.
I think there was concern at the end of the second meeting in May where we didn't know what the cost of the study was. I mean, rough idea. It might be 8, might be 10, might be 15. I don't know what it is. That was really poorly done on his part.
Yeah.
Honestly.
And that's why we asked him, and rightfully so, he should have been called on that, was that he needed to bring back an actual cost.
Not well done. But I think anytime we want to discuss something, we should be able to do it. I don't think we should have had to rescind that stupid motion last night. If we want to discuss something, God dang it, we should be able to do that.
Well,
And
that was
according
partly, Mick
to
was asking
Robert's
for,
rules.
was
How
asking
you
for
do
a
that?
determination from the attorney on a ruling on Robert's order, and she gave you the ruling, what you
Well,
had to
we-
do
we
in
beat
order
it
for that
death.
to
Let's move
happen.
on. Let's go home.
And we are governed by Robert's Rule of Order unless you want to adopt the league's meeting,
I would
how to
recommend
do
that.
it. And I would recommend that, because then you get out from under Robert's Rule.
They have a much
It's much easier, much better.
Further discussion.
Let's
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 move-
have a work
move to
session for
adjourn.
that.
No meeting tomorrow night.
We're done. Let's go
No
home.
meeting tomorrow night.
I have my own.
I'm leaving, I'm giving you the assignment if you have concerns on revenue.